3 races in, 3 different winners as Season 5 makes its way and rolls into the Music City, where tonight we welcome you to race number 4 in the NASRA Triple M Pulling Truck Series and the Starbase Comics 200 live from the virtual Nashville Superspeedway. As always, so happy to have you on another Friday night. Welcome to our coverage here on Racecraft TV, where alongside Ian Fisher in the broadcast booth, my name is Kenneth Bueno. We'll have Zach Johnson producing all of our shots here tonight from Lebanon, Tennessee. And Ian, the biggest thing to note about our first 3 races this season, we have yet to have anyone repeat. We've had 3 different styles of racing, whether it comes to the super speedway at Daytona, to the intermediate style of racing at Homestead, Miami, to the short track intimate style of racing we just saw last week at the Martinsville Speedway. And now we get to shake things up, a very unique track in Lebanon, Tennessee, Nashville Superspeedway, to maybe continue our streak of new winners so far in Season 5.
And that's absolutely correct, Kenneth. Nashville Superspeedway, one of the few all-concrete tracks on the circuit this season and in the NASCAR circuit in general. We've talked about it all year long. This is a tough stretch of tracks these drivers have to face here, starting at Nashville. You go to Sonoma, Talladega, Darlington, all kind of a wild card and a real test of all these drivers' skills and really how they can manage their trucks and how they can manage all the different types of superspeedways and short tracks, like you said, road courses at Sonoma, Kenneth, all these tracks that these drivers have to deal with.
And so many tracks that we'll talk about over the course of this 2022 season. You're watching drivers right now putting their best 2 laps in the qualifying session, roughly 3 minutes until we get everybody on the grid for the green flag here tonight in our Starbase Comics 200. But Ian, let's talk a little bit about this Nashville Superspeedway, a very interesting venue, opened back in 2001. And if you can already see it on the front of your screen, there's one thing here that's very different from a lot of the other tracks we race on the calendar. That is a full concrete surface. Really, the only other track you see full concrete surface all around the venue is Dover Motor Speedway. They seem to be related with the people that do own them, but it's a 1.33 mile, 2.145 kilometer oval, and of course opened back in 2001. And there are years of 10 years in increments, Ian, about the opening, the closing in 2011, and then the revival in 2021. And this track has provided a lot of great challenges, and it's been great to have it back on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule and across the National Series, all 3 of them. It's great to have it on iRacing too for these truck drivers to enjoy.
Absolutely. And I think the unique thing about Nashville as well is that it's a lot different from any of the other tracks that we go to. And a lot of the other tracks of this length of 1.5 to 2 miles are very similar. It's kind of a cookie cutter format. Nashville is the same basic layout if you look at it from a top-down view, but really the combination of the concrete surface and then the low banking here at Nashville make it a real challenge for these drivers. The one saving grace is this is late at night, or later in the evening, I should say. And also the cloud cover is going to help a lot with grip levels as well, Kenneth.
And it's definitely true. Usually we talk about concrete surfaces absorbing and basically retaining the heat and giving the tires and the drivers a hard time. But again, like you said, fortunately we are under the lights and we're under cooler skies here in Lebanon, Tennessee in sim. So we will deal with some potential wheel spin on the later half of the runs, but it won't necessarily be as bad as, let's say, we were in the middle of the day. We would have easily been in the triple digits on the track temperatures as you continue to watch the drivers put in the qualifying times. And Ian, of course, our 3 races, 3 different winners last week. Ted Wade taking away the win. It would look to not be his race in the opening half, then took it away in that second half, and it looked like he never looked back. Wade joining Chris Cinnamon and Joey Doucette as the other 2 that are officially locked in to these 2022 playoffs. And with this track being such an oddball in the middle between the short track and the normal intermediates we usually visit, it means that we do have an up-in-the-air opportunity for anyone to grab their first win and continue a streak of different winners, add more people to the playoffs, and of course make the fight for the title much more interesting once we get later into the season.
Yep, and we continue our trend early in the season here at different races. We started at Daytona Super Speedway, and then we went to Homestead, Miami, another unique 1.5 track, Martinsville, the short track, and now we end up here at the 1.3 track of Nashville. So really an opportunity for any one of these drivers throughout the field to put on their best performance at maybe a specialty track for them. Maybe if you're a road course driver, you're able to catch one at Sonoma. Or maybe if you're a concrete specialist, like I know one of my favorite drivers growing up, Carl Edwards, always seemed to win on concrete. This could be your night, Kenneth.
That's definitely true, and usually you think about tracks like these that are not necessarily large enough to be considered a full-on intermediate, but not short enough to be considered a full-on short track. It's sort of in the middle of that Darlington Raceway, which I believe we'll see later on in the season. That will be in the same category. Those tracks that are just so different from others, and they feel like a short track and an intermediate together. It's just the best of both worlds, and it certainly brings out the best of the entire field. They're looking overhead here at the Nashville Super Speedway, but we will take you trackside to give you your starting grid for the Starbase Comics 200 and see exactly where every single driver will line up here tonight from Nashville. It's Justin Lumpkin with a 30.084. He grabs the Pulse Poppers Pole Award into P1. He'll be the first one to see the green tonight. He'll have Tyler Dittmer on his outside in the 34 on that very first row. Brady LaBeouf, we saw some standout highlights out of him last week at Martinsville. We'll see if he can have a full complete race this time around for his first race win of season 5. He's inside of row number 2, P3. He'll have the defending winner from last week at Martinsville, Ted Wade, off to a good start in this qualifying session as he rounds out your top 4. Teammate for Upfront Motorsports, Chris Cinnamon, will round out your top 5. He'll have the 78 of Keith Haney to his outside in P number 6, followed by row number 4, Michael McKinnon in the 13, Joey Doucette on his outside to double up in P8 in that 16 truck. Devin Painter in the 99, a solid qualifying effort with a 30.158. He'll be 9th, and on his outside to round out the top 10, Ian, will be the 29 of Keith Bradley.
And making up row number 6, we have the 48 truck of Robert Richards and the 1 truck of Jason Morales. On row number 7 on the inside, 13, number 20 truck Joe Jose Luis Rivera, and the number 4 of Adam Norbert is in the 14th position. Dane Hagen in the 39 truck will roll off in 15th, and Jacob Klinkhart in the 16th. The 5 truck will roll off in 16th. Stephen Thomas in the 23 is in 17th, and Brian Abbott in the 82 is in 18th, making up row number 9. And then Jeffrey Sickles and Dana Shepard in row number 10 make up the top 20, Kenneth.
We'll look to 21st on back as it stands. CJ Fondahl in the 53. He is 21st. Trey Pitts to his outside in 22nd. That's row number 11. Zach Hardwick deep in the field tonight from 23rd. And so is Taylor Peacock. Both of them a good amount of work to do here once we drop the green here from Nashville. That's the end of row number 12. Then Cody Knott in the 26 for Team Watson Racing. He rounds out your top 25. And the 19 of Christopher Blanchard. Took him a while to get his qualifying lap set, but he sets a lap good enough for 26. Lucas Whitehead will be 27th with Tony Smith to his outside in row number 14. And then the final ones in the top 30, Brandon Bullock in the 17, James Morris in the 47. And the rest of the field stands like this. Jonathan Munda in the 15, 31st, 32nd to Eric Zimmerman, Derek Kilgore, Adam Cantwell, 33rd, 34th. And then the final row of tonight's race, 35th, 36th, Huck Wigington in the 00, and James Haney in the 55. Our full 36 truck field as the pace truck will bring them out of turn 4. We'll go one more extra lap before we go. Green flag racing, Ian, of course, with the fact that we do have a changing fuel capacity throughout each and every race. You are guaranteed to make our first 2 stages tonight. Lap 38, the conclusion of stage 1, stage 2 ending on lap 80, but then we go straight to lap 155 at a window of around 53 to 58 laps. So with our strategy and with this concrete surface, it may throw some curveballs at these guys with the way this track treats its drivers, especially if you treat it wrong, vice versa.
And each and every week, it seems like we're talking about different types of fuel strategies, and the race goes in all kinds of different directions with the way that the cautions fall and how these drivers end up racing with each other, Kenneth. So we can make all the predictions we want, but we'll probably tear them up and throw them out the window by the time that stage 2 is over. But at least there's a little bit there for these drivers to think about in that 3rd stage. Always nice to see a stop under green. I think that's really fun for everybody watching at home, and also for us up in the booth just to see how it's going to shake out.
Oh yeah, it's definitely fun, especially this entrance. You don't use the access road that some people would in 3 and 4. You just get out of turn 4, but it is a very difficult entrance out of the concrete banking onto that pit road entry. So hopefully we get to see some of that if we get green flag racing. Martinsville last week plagued by some of the cautions. We had some strategy mix-ups there, but for the most part, it just evened things out. We'll see if tonight is any different in that case. Pace truck makes its way down to the entrance of pit road. 87 of Justin Lumpkin, the first one to see the green. Tyler Dimmer to his outside. They'll enter the Geico restart zone. Green flag is in the air, and we're underway in race 4 of the NASRA Triple M Pulling Truck Series and the Starbase Comics 200. Solid jump on lap number 1. Justin Lumpkin to the race lead, although had to play some defense against Brady LaBeouf, who tried to make a move down low, and he officially clears the 34 of Tyler Dittmer. So bring the 9 to P2 as they come out of turn 2. They're side by side for position in the top 5. Those are teammates. The 3 of Chris Cinnamon on the inside, Ted Wade up top, trying to play at least the middle ground here. But so far it is all Justin Lumpkin to the first couple laps here from Nashville.
But you said it, Kenneth. Brady LaBeouf got shot out of a cannon there on that initial start and was able to shoot down to the inside on turn 1 and really challenge Justin Lumpkin for the lead early. Lumpkin was able to hang on the outside line and use that momentum, but Brady LaBeouf, we've seen him all season long challenging for that spot, and also Tyler Dittmer in the 34 truck as well. Both of them always up front and challenging for the lead here.
And they had some quick speed at Martinsville just 1 week ago in the season, but unfortunately things did not work out for either one of them strategy-wise or caution-wise. They just continued to fly, and the problems there, including the 9 of LaBeouf. We saw him go around in the entrance of turn 1, so he's definitely looking for some redemption on a night that could have been his first race win of season 5 in that 9 truck, and already hunting down the 87 of Justin Lumpkin. We are basically single file deep within the top 10. First battle is around the top 15. Stephen Thomas and looks like Jacob Klinkart in the 5. Also the 20 of Jose Luis Rivera, sporting a new Race Lab Chevy Silverado this week, Ian, and some nice colors there. They'll go single file, but I think this is the trend that we're going to see here at a Nashville Superspeedway type track. It's so abrasive, it's so tough, it demands so much out of you that in these runs, you'd rather be single file and hug that bottom lane. You don't want to be forced out anywhere else.
Yeah, and a truck that's been doing a good job of that so far in the 13th position is the 48 truck of Robert Richards. Had a rough week at Martinsville last week, got up front and was even challenging for the lead, but a number of incidents that really weren't his fault kind of set him back in the pack and really ruined his race. So right now doing a good job hanging on to that 13th spot in front of this little pack here that's kind of a battle all the way up through 15th, Kenneth.
And he had a view of Jacob Klinkart in his rearview mirror hit the outside wall out of turn 4. That may also be something we talk about, Ian, the understeer effect you get if you just push a little bit too hard in these corners and that right front goes away. Yes, we're not dealing with a severely hot track temperature here in Lebanon, Tennessee in sim, but the tire wear is still going to be a big problem. And for Klinkart, you can already see the heavy damage on the right side of his Chevy Silverado. He fell out of the battle of the top 15, so Brian Abbott would clear himself away for P16. They're battling around the top 10. That's Joey Doucette inside on Michael McKinnon in the 13.
And you bring up an interesting point there. We always talk about how the different tracks, as we see LaBeouf now on the 9 truck make a move to the inside of the 87 for the lead here. There, he's going to make the inside line work possibly, but it looks like the 87 there has the run off the corner. We'll see how it is coming back to the stripe here. But you were talking about tire wear there, Kenneth, and what it does to these trucks. It isn't necessarily if you run your tires hard or if you run your tires soft, not necessarily compound wise, but driving wise. It doesn't matter if a track is abrasive or not abrasive. If you run your tires more than the guy in front of you or behind you, that just makes it even harder to catch them or keep in front of them if that's what you happen to do now. As we see that a little bit maybe even with the 87 truck here, now losing a spot to Dittmer and now under fire from Ted Wade here for now 3rd position. So maybe burning up those tires early or possibly just settling in and trying to find a nice groove on the racetrack.
It could also just be, Ian, also a compounding of 2 different problems. One of them being dirty air. He got trapped behind the 9 as he was getting past, and then probably suffered that wearing out the right front, and then into the inside came Tyler Dittmer, and then he's forced into a line that here in Nashville Superspeedway can somewhat work in that middle lane if we play some defense, but for the most part, it's not necessarily the fastest way around the racetrack. You really want to be hugging that inside lane nearest towards the apron on the bottom of the racetrack. So Lumpkin suffered both of those, and now he has fallen to 4th, maybe even under the top 5 if he gets passed by the 78 of Keith Haney. But for now, he has been able to stay in the middle of this group, and that moves Tyler Dittmer to 2nd. Ted Wade has shuffled into 3rd, and they have allowed Brady LaBeouf to separate from the rest of the gang. Almost about half a second between LaBeouf and Dittmer. So a pivotal change in position there, Ian. I think just broke up everybody. And later in the run, although we're only at lap 10, we're just going to see more of this get exacerbated. The field's separating, and the guys who are better at conserving their tires and playing the dirty air game, they'll be able to pretty much be leagues away from everyone else, and everyone else is just going to have to fend for themselves what they got.
Yeah, and early in this race here, it looks like that 9 truck is absolutely on rails, just pulling away from the rest of the field right now. The only truck that's able to challenge is possibly Dittmer in the 34, and he's about half a second back now, and it's increasing. But we talk about that tire wear so much. You could run away from the field early in a run, but then maybe you leave yourself open for a late run attack here, especially as we get towards the end of the stage here at 35 laps there, Kenneth. So you really got to play the balancing act, especially in these short runs early, to try to get yourself as many stage points as possible.
Yeah, stage points has been so crucial already through the first 3 or so races. And again, we talk about winning and locking yourself into the playoffs. But you also got to think, if you get to stage wins and you get to the top 10 in either of the stages at lap 38 and lap 80 tonight, you are, of course, going to get points. If you win a stage, you're going to get a playoff point to your benefit. So all of that is basically building up to the bigger picture of making the playoffs. And mostly going to be important for those guys that, let's say we get to the end of the regular season and they don't have a win, they'll be better off having playoff points and points from stages rather than just staying out of the top 10 entirely and not getting any of those points, using them to their advantage. You continue to watch Brady LaBeouf push himself away from the field, so still about roughly half a second in front of the 34 Tyler Dittmer, although he hasn't really pulled away too much. Lap times comparative between the 9 and the 34. As of lap 13, basically everyone single file, and the top 5 have broken away. It seems as though they are the best trucks right now on the field. But again, Ian, just turning back to your point, we're only on lap 14. We're not even halfway to our stage conclusion at lap 38. So safe to say, a lot of racing left, and we could see a change in pace throughout the run based on who has what and how their driving style caters to it.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of strategy involved there as well, too. I mean, I haven't seen it so far this season, but there is always the play where you pit before the stage break and try to get yourself out into an early position and try to get some track position that way. I haven't seen too many drivers and too many teams do it so far this year, but there's also balancing getting the stage points over the overall race win. And maybe if you're one of those drivers that's on that cut line in points for the positions in the playoffs, maybe you try to play that car, roll the dice a little bit, pit before the stage ends, and get yourself that track position to maybe try to run up front with these guys and put yourself in a position to get that all important win, Kenneth, and lock yourself into the playoffs early.
And the win we've talked about being so important to lifting a lot of the weight on the shoulders. And we talked to Ted Wade when he picked up his first win at Martinsville, and he expressed how great it was to not have to worry about points racing, not have to worry about going in each and every race. Basically like if it was paycheck to paycheck, thinking, all right, I need to do this race. I need to finish here in this race. I need to make sure I survive here and make sure I do this here, make sure I'm ahead of this guy here and my teammate there, and so on and so forth. Once you get that win, for the rest of the regular season, you're like, okay, bring on the playoffs. I have all these races to mentally prepare myself and feel basically how my speed is for the rest of the season against the competition. As you watch a nice fight here around P12, Robert Richards and Adam Newbert, the 48 and the 4 going at it back to turn 3. But that win is just so important on basically relieving all of the main pressures of a regular season getting put together by a driver, Ian. It's just so important to get a checkered flag in this playoff format and then just ride the rest of the season out.
It's relieving if you're the driver that has the race win early in the season, but it's also a little bit terrifying if you're the rest of the field, because you're talking a little bit of all the things that you have to think about if you haven't got a win this early in the season. And as we're talking, Kenneth, the 34 of Dittmer is now taking a run to the inside of Brady LaBeouf here for the race lead. And off of 4, it actually looks like Dittmer has a little bit of a run on him here, maybe going to run him down all the way to the inside and try to cut off that start-finish line, as we see so many drivers try to do here. But it looks like they're going to be side by side back in the turn 1.
But the caution will come out, and it's on behalf of the CJ Fonda machine, the 53, around smoke out of the front end of the Toyota Tundra TRD Pro, and that will bring us our first caution here tonight in the Starbase Comics 200, and basically halfway through stage number 1, lap 19, as Derek Kilgore will take a trip down to pit road. We figure he might have been also involved in it. There is also smoke coming out of that Ford F-150, so there is a huge problem, and I find the cause of it in contact between the 53 and the 17. Brandon Bullock gets into Fonda there, and as Fonda goes for the spin, travels down the racetrack, Derek Kilgore nowhere to go.
Really unfortunate for Kilgore. Really, yeah, like you said, nowhere to go. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Kenneth, but he was our hard charger award winner last week, and just coming into Nashville here, really looking for another good run. And that's really not what you want to see, especially this early in the race, and really no fault of his own. Just kind of got caught up in something that two guys earlier in the track happened there. And I don't really know. I think, oh, okay, so the 17 just kind of drove it in there, maybe not necessarily aggressively, but I don't think he was expecting the 53 to come down as much as he did, Kenneth.
Oh yeah, 100%. You see him running the middle lane, and it feels like the 17's like, all right, there's some free real estate there. I'm just going to go to the inside and just try to make this pass. But it looks like CJ was just trying to arc the corner and get the bottom groove working. By the time he was on the exit, that's where the contact was made. And unfortunately, that's where we have two trucks severely damaged. Fondal has, of course, taken it down pit road. He is going to be 3 laps down and counting. He's going to wait things out. But unfortunately for the 11 of Derek Kilgore, he is going to be out of the race. He has officially pulled it behind the wall. So for the 11 truck, his night is officially over here in the Starbase comics. 200. And something interesting here, Ian, we talk about some of the strategies and where yellows fall. We have some guys on pit road right now. It looks like Jacob Klinkart leading 28th on back to the pit stall on the first yellow.
And I think when the yellow comes out, especially in this portion of the first stage, it makes it a little bit easier to make that call to possibly pit before the end of the stage, because you always run the risk if you pit under green. If that yellow comes out when you're on pit road, you're trapped maybe 1 lap down, Kenneth. But I think it makes it a lot easier under yellow to pit and just know that you're going to end up at the back of the pack and then cycle back up for the front when everybody else goes to pit road at the end of the stage.
It's an interesting call as well, because this is halfway through stage 1, so you are going to go through that whole tire cycle. Things going to start to wear off, and then when these guys come on a pit road here at the end of that first stage, of course they can make it on fuel, they can make it clearly on tires. There's not going to be a worry about blowing any Goodyear Eagles out here in that first stage, but you know, those guys, maybe some damage repair. I know Klinkart is definitely for damage repair, with the fact that he did smack the outside wall out of turn 4 a while back in that first stage. So there he is in that Kyle Larson inspired number 5 Chevy Serato. But as for everyone else, a lot of them just taking either some damage repair, or maybe there could be a tire call, maybe there could be a fuel call. I'm guessing mostly fuel here, but nonetheless, I think a very interesting decision by those guys in the back. And I mean, also, I don't think you should blame them either. I mean, they're on the back of the field. They have nothing to lose, so why not take this risk and go for stage points?
Yeah, exactly. And also, I mean, you kind of run that risk, like I said, of playing the track position game. And, you know, if you get a few yellows early, it kind of cycles out the tires for everybody, and it's not as big of an advantage. But you're definitely taking a risk. But as you kind of mentioned, if you're at the back of the pack, you have nothing to lose. So risks are almost universally at that point a good thing. But if you shoot yourself in the foot, you're not falling too far.
That's definitely true, and we will double them up, I believe, this time through. The lights will be out on the iRacing official pace car. TJ Moore, our race control here tonight, has given CJ Fondal an end-of-line penalty, but I don't believe that's really going to take into effect, considering that the 53 is still on pit road and still trying to repair what's left of that Toyota Tundra TRD Pro. But the biggest thing to take away on that first run, Ian, is that 34 has some long-run pace that Brady LaBeouf might be worried about, and the fact that we're going to be restarting here double file. Dittmer's going to be the inside with Brady LaBeouf up top. I think LaBeouf may have something worth fighting for in P1 once we get to the first handful of corners.
Yeah, and you had mentioned it too on our broadcast chat here, Kenneth, as we were coming to that first yellow, that Dittmer really had some speed there in that last stretch of laps. So I don't know if the yellow and the tires cooling back down is going to play in the Brady LaBeouf's favor, but definitely in the long run, as you mentioned, Tyler Dittmer does have the speed to catch Brady LaBeouf.
And what that does do as well is bring in the 2 of Ted Wade, the 87 of Justin Lumpkin. Remember, we talked about Lumpkin kind of falling off after starting tonight on the Pulse Poppers Pole Award spot. And Keith Haney as well, the latter half of the top 5. And Haney was basically the last truck in that group when they had separated themselves from Michael McKinnon, who was holding on to P6. Now everyone is back square together, so we'll see if there are any changes based on that. As we come out of turn 4, the pace truck will make its move down to pit road. We'll enter the Geico restart zone, and we will go back green flag racing with 14 laps to go in our first stage. Have confirmation that CJ Fondal has pulled it behind the garage. His night is officially over from Nashville Super Speedway. Brady LaBeouf, And Tyler Dittmer, the 9 and the 34, into the restart zone to the green flag. LaBeouf with a huge jump to send the field back to turn 1.
Yeah, really got a really great jump off the restart there and able to get out to a huge lead into turn 1. Rest of the field battling second on back, but Dittmer able to get himself out into some clean wet air here and going to try to reel in the 9 again, Brady. Or, sorry, Kenneth.
And here they come into turn 3. Joey Doucette fight with Michael McKinnon. This is for 6, so the highest we've seen Joey Doucette all night after starting in P8. A nice recovery there, a nice move up through the field. In the opening 24, McKinnon strikes the outside wall and tagged Keith Bradley there in the 29. It'll give Bradley some trouble there on the right side of his Chevy Silverado, but they will stay straight. That was a huge brown pants moment for everyone behind them, Ian, as they were going side by side.
Yeah, really good job there by the 29 truck to really hang on to it. You saw him go all the way down to the grass, but able to keep the truck underneath him, and we stay green.
Nice recovery there by Bradley to stay straight. As they're going side by side, that is Newbert underneath Chris Cinnamon in the 3. Of course, Cinnamon, our winner at the Daytona International Speedway. Joey Doucette, the one we talked about as aforementioned, winner at Homestead, Miami. So two of those drivers in that group locked into these 2022 playoffs. No problem here for Newbert as he makes that pass, and he will be clear for 11th. We're trying to work on the 23 of Steven Thomas. And speaking of single file, they have done just that for the top 5. There's Robert Richards looking underneath the 20. Jose Luis Rivera, who had a very strong end to the Martinsville race last week. I think the biggest thing to note right now, Ian, is the fact that Justin Lumpkin has found a way to stop the bleeding after that mistake and getting put back in traffic. He is holding on to 3rd, and he is keeping himself rather close to the 34 of Dittmer.
Lumpkin, yeah, doing a good job getting himself back up into the top 3 after the getting kind of shuffled back there in the beginning of the race. But Dittmer, again, had a huge run down the back stretch last time by, really able to get to the back bumper of LaBeouf there. So he still has the speed that we saw earlier in this run, Kenneth.
He almost struck the outside wall. Here's a look on board. The Triple M pulling logo on the main deck lid, or the truck bed, of Brady LaBeouf's number 9 machine entering turn 1. Dittmer that time 31 flat, LaBeouf's 30.9. So the 9 truck holding on to what he can, but he knows Dittmer is there, and that draft is only going to suck him in. Here comes Joey Doucette to the inside. That is a pass attempted here for 5th. Underneath Keith Haney, you can see it in the background just a little bit, that orange number 16 buck kicker Chevy Silverado making that move coming out of turn 4. There's a clearer look coming out of the corner, the bright pink Ford F-150 here, Ian. So Joey Doucette continuing a run through the field. No strategy call whatsoever. This is just Joey Doucette being quick in this run.
Yeah, and able to slide up a little bit there in front of the 78 of Keith Haney, but really here with the track as grippy as it is with the nighttime temperatures and now a little bit of rubber starting to get worn into the track, really that bottom line is going to be the line where you make most of your passes. So if you're someone who's being challenged right now, like we see Doucette being challenged by the 78 of Haney, you really want to try to stay on the top of them as much as you can and really just not give them as much room so you can kind of keep that momentum around the outside as much as you can and try to battle back there.
But also the thing is, you see what Doucette is doing. He's pinching Haney down on the corner. We had that topic of conversation at Martinsville last week where those corners are very tight. Of course, they're very slow, but to get the run out of the corners, if you're on that outside, you have to force that driver down to their limit. And for Doucette, it's going to work to keep himself ahead of that 78. So move Doucette in at 5th, and they will bring in the 13 of Michael McKinnon. As they were going side by side for about a lap or so, McKinnon got brought back into this thing, so he'll try to make a pass here maybe sooner than later on this 78 and make a trek through the front of the field, much like the 16 of Joey Doucette is doing right now. Also, one thing though you do have to notice if you're running that inside is that there is no safety if you get a little bit further under that 14 degrees of banking. The apron here at Nashville is categorized as very dangerous when it comes down to killing your momentum 100%. We have the same topic at Dover. It's the same problem where if you just nab that apron just a little bit, it is going to cost you dearly. So you have to watch for that as well. Keep yourself above that yellow line, but don't throw it a little bit too much with disaster or it could end terribly for you.
There's no transition the flat there, so if you touch any tire on that, like you said, you're going to lift immediately, and that's just going to kind of drive you up the racetrack. And not only that, you're going to have to get yourself a few laps there to really get back into your rhythm, and you're probably going to lose a few positions there, as we almost saw the 2 of Ted Wade get a little bit squirrely as we see farther back in the pack here. Truck's trying to avoid the 48 truck, not sure what happened to him.
They're scrambling 3 wide going into turn 1. Richards a little bit slow. He's going to open the door for Chris Cinnamon, the 39. Dane Hagen in the background. Dana Shepard, Jason Morales, Brian Abbott, and a multitude of others. They are basically 3 wide for position on the back straightaway entering turn 3. So if you want to call a place a hornet's nest on the racetrack, this is going to be it around the top 15. They are going haywire, and Cinnamon will hold the outside on Dane Hagen. That is a pass for 15th. But for the moment, they'll calm things down. It is getting hectic, though, as here comes a pass attempted up ahead. Jose Luis Rivera, Trey Pitts going at it into the corner.
Yeah, Jose Luis Rivera, and then also the 3-truck of Chris Cinnamon really trying to make that outside lane work. And really, again, not sure what happened to the 48 of Robert Richards, but he's able to gain pace back again and able to move to the inside now of the 20 of Jose Luis Rivera. So whatever happened to him, he's able to recover quickly, Kenneth, and moving his way back up the field again.
So Rivera will be down low. There's Cinnamon working the high side. It looks like the 3 of Cinnamon has done a nice job to keep himself in that middle lane. Not seeing many drivers use that lane here at Nashville Superspeedway. Again, we talk about how prominent that very inside is, but for Cinnamon, it seems to be working to perfection. So maybe he found something, Ian, that other drivers aren't. Now he'll go to the inside into the final 2 sets of corners coming out of turn 4, and he'll try to chase down this battle up for 12th. Robert Richards underneath Keith Bradley. He'll make quick work of the upfront Motorsport Chevy Silverado, who picked up damage out of turn 4 earlier with Michael McKinnon. And so Chris Cinnamon will make that pass complete. Both of them in the same colored trucks, Ian. So a little bit of a spotter's nightmare, I guess, if you're one of those guys here from Nashville Superspeedway. But it's good to see the 2 teammates together inside, or working inside the top 10, trying to get there.
Well, if you're the spotter for the 3-truck of Chris Cinnamon as well, it's kind of easy to tell who he was, because he just passed about 5 guys there on the front stretch, so that's kind of easy to keep up with that. But really, that 3-truck right now is just putting down the lap times, reeling in the 48 there of Robert Richards, and just tearing up the field so far right now. He's laying down some really fast lap times.
And we'll watch if Cinnamon makes any further progress, but we are ending into our final 2 laps here in stage number 1 from the Nashville Superspeedway to continue our Starbase Comics 200. There's Adam Newbert in a fight underneath the 23 of Stephen Thomas, so they'll work it on the front straightaway, but it's all about Brady LaBeouf into the final lap of stage number 1. Tyler Dittmer trying to chase Ted Wade in the background there for Upfront Motorsports. But what a stage and what a race so far it's been ever since the drop of the green into turn 1. LaBeouf has had a lot of speed, and he will carry it into 3 and 4 for the final time in our first stage. And to the line, Brady LaBeouf will go to win stage number 1. Tyler Dittmer got close, but not close enough. Brady LaBeouf, your winner of stage 1 here from Nashville.
And just a dominating drive from that 9-truck of Brady LaBeouf so far in this race. The only truck that was able to give him any kind of competition was that 34 truck of Tyler Dittmer that we mentioned so many times. But Dittmer there in that last stretch of laps is running about a 10th slower than Brady LaBeouf. So whatever speed that Tyler Dittmer has found, either lost it or Brady LaBeouf has found more speed around this 1 1/3 Nashville Superspeedway there, Kenneth.
It was just a nice change of pace there if you're LaBeouf, because Dittmer looked like he found the weakness and found the crack in that barrier that LaBeouf had put up over the first half of that stage, and then the caution came out and it felt like it was a flip of a switch. Brady LaBeouf just rocketed it away on the restart and just could not be caught. Dittmer was there, no doubt about it, but just was not as fast as he was in the first 19. I think, like you said, Ian, the colding of the tires there after the first caution, and the fact that you're not necessarily continuing that rhythm, and maybe broke things up for Dittmer, and he just could not get back into that rhythm that made him so fast, and maybe reached that cliff point a little bit too early than he necessarily wanted to. So Dittmer, though, will still hold on a second, and of course all these guys in the top 10 will get stage points. Final driver into the top 10 is the one who started in P9, the 99 of Devin Painter. And Ian, here comes the field on a pit road. Of course, no surprise, probably going to see some 4 fresh tires and some fuel to make it all the way to stage number 2, lap 80.
Yeah, definitely feeding time here on pit road. Pretty much everybody came out. I think that's possibly the 20 truck of Jose Luis Rivera is the only truck that stayed out. I'm not exactly sure. I'm looking down here, and I don't think we have anybody that's a lap down except for the Derek Kilgore and CJ Fonda, our 2 retired drivers in this race so far. So I don't think anybody's really going to be staying out for a wave around unless it was the 20 truck there. But yeah, it looks like, I'm sorry, the 47 it looks like stayed out, but pretty much everybody else down pit road. Kenneth.
So So a unique call. We'll see if it pays off for the 47 or if he takes a second guess to come down for service. Brady LaBeouf will come out first. No surprise. Tyler Dittmer, Ted Wade, your top 3 coming out of the pit lane. Joey Doucette holding on to 4th. Justin Lumpkin, your top 5 coming out of the lane. There's a look at the 47, basically all by his lonesome behind the iRacing official pace truck, and he was just trying to hold on. We'll see if he comes down pit road this time by, but this call may be a secure one here, and he is going to get eaten up by the field, no doubt about it, if he's just holding on for a tire set. Because if there's one thing about concrete surfaces, Ian, we mentioned other asphalt surfaces and how rough they are on Goodyear Eagles. This surface, concrete, is basically the same, if not much worse on the tires. So wheel spin on restarts are a thing here, and they are very treacherous. You have to make sure those tires are just as comfortable as they can be. You don't want to overstretch them a little bit too much, because this track would definitely give you a negative side effect to it all.
Yeah, and it looks like Morris is going to stay out. So, yeah, that's going to be something to watch here, especially coming to this next restart, Kenneth, to see how he navigates all the rest of the field with fresh tires. Definitely going to be a challenge to hang on up front. But if you're looking to gain some easy track position, that was one way to do it, and just kind of see where you shake out mid-pack.
So we'll stay under caution here. Next time by, we will get the 1 to green signal from the pace truck. So we'll go green, I believe, around lap number 44. So that gives us roughly 36 laps until the end of stage number 2, which of course will come at lap 80. We've already discussed ad nauseum that stage 1 and stage 2 aren't necessarily the risky parts when it comes down to strategy, just because you can make it on field to the end. Tires are a question mark, but for the most part, the whole field comes down in consensus, so there's not necessarily a huge split in the field unless you're talking about some certain tracks. It's going to be that last stage that moves to 155 laps to the end of our Starbase Comics 200. That will be the biggest topic of conversation that we'll get to later on. So far, James D. Morris holds on to the NASRA 360 Hard Charger Award, but that is, of course, because he stayed out. But if you're looking for on-track moves, it'll be the 8th of Adam Cantwell you're looking for in contention for that Hard Charger Award. He started 34th, and he has moved up to P19 on the track. So a nice move up through the field in at a place that doesn't look like you can make a lot of moves at. Cantwell has been one of those guys.
Yeah, and it kind of surprised me when I saw Cantwell towards the rear of the field after qualifying, because he had a strong run at Martinsville. So obviously just maybe a little bit of a hiccup in qualifying. You know, it's tough with those 2 laps. A lot of these drivers do it each and every week, almost every single day, but still easy to make a mistake, especially on a tricky track surface like we have here at Nashville. So Cantwell able to make his way up to the field pretty efficiently, but he's always been one to watch out for and to be up front all night long, and I think he's just trying to move his way back up there as fast as he can, Kenneth.
So Cantwell restarting in that 19th position. He'll be on the inside. We'll keep note if that 8 machine does make some more moves, but Cantwell on the way up. And obviously here in stage number 2, looking to continue that and break into the top 15. If he can do that, then it's just going to be maybe a smooth sailing effort to the top 10. And we'll see if he has enough pace to keep up with our top 5, who seem to be the outright fastest of the entire field, but they're going to be second on back because your race leader, James Morris, stayed out on the recent stop at the end of stage number 1. Brady LaBeouf, your stage winner, will be on the outside of row number 1. Pace truck makes its way down. Morris heads into the Geico restart zone, an early jump for the 47, and we're back under green from Nashville. Dittmer down low underneath Brady LaBeouf for second. That restart, Ian, definitely helped the 34, and the fresh tires are starting to come in. Inside for the race lead goes the 34 into turn 3.
Yeah, 34 closely pursued by the 9 and the 2 of Ted Wade. They're able to make mincemeat of the 47 truck of James D. Morris there, who's stuck on the outside line right now. And if he doesn't get down to the bottom quick and get himself in a groove, I think he's just going to continue to fall back. But now a 4-way battle here for second place, with Doucette now entering into the fray, Kenneth.
And just saw Brady LaBeouf on that last lap got way loose out of turn 4 and had to revert the truck up the track. So that opened it for Ted Wade to go down to the inside, and maybe even then some for Joey Doucette. Although that's going to be mitigated here. LaBeouf is going to be able to hold on to that 3rd spot. Morris, you see him on the very outside, basically holding on for dear life. The entire field working their way by. Nothing that the 47 could do, but that was the restart of a lifetime for Tyler Dittmer, up to half a second over Ted Wade in P2.
Yeah, and he really did try. James Morris there really did try on the restart, got a really good jump and tried to get down to the turn one as fast as you can, but we just see the advantage that 4 fresh Goodyear Eagle tires will do to these trucks, able to just drive away as the rest of the field from him right now.
And in a way here in Nashville, we've seen it be rather tough to make some passes out on the racetrack. And you got to imagine here, Ian, that Dittmer just took the opportunity. That may be what this race is all about, opening up the opportunities and taking advantage of them when they open up for you. Dittmer saw the advantage there of Morris going early because he's on old tires, knowing that he's going to get destroyed by the field coming out of turn 2. And Dittmer saw that inside line and said, all right, I'm going to get the jump here on Brady LaBeouf. I'm going to move to the inside. That's my opportunity. And now I'm in clean air for the race lead.
Well, these split-second decisions really do make up a race. You mentioned there, Dittmer makes the move to the inside, able to grab the race lead, now has clean air on his truck, and we see LaBeouf now here was even passed by Ted Wade in the 2 truck there. So it seems like clean air is really key here at Nashville, like it is at a majority of racetracks, but definitely a move there by Dittmer to get himself out in front of this field and just try to chip away at these laps here.
And we'll see also as well how Brady LaBeouf handles the situation, because him being up front for so long, he's accustomed to the clean air. But not only is he behind the 34 for the race lead, he's in 3rd behind Ted Wade. So there's an extra truck he has to make a move on before he can plan an attack and build a blueprint on what he has to do to get around that bright teal and purple and white Chevy Silverado in the 34 of Dittmer up front. Ted Wade basically being the buffer in all of this, helping Tyler Dittmer in a way from keeping Brady LaBeouf from doing anything. But I think that was a very tough situation if you're the 9 of LaBeouf, because getting loose out of turn 4, I think that was definitely the mistake of the run so far. And although he is still in 3rd as we cross the line for 30 laps to go left in stage number 2, it's going to set him up for an entirely different approach to maybe what he was looking forward to at the end of winning stage 1.
Of course, and then now you see these top 3 trucks of Dittmer, Wade, and LaBeouf kind of breaking away from the rest of the pack. Doucette now falling into the clutches of Justin Lumpkin in the 87 truck. But if you're these top 3 trucks, especially if you're Brady LaBeouf right now, you want to do as much as you can to try to put a cushion between you and the rest of the field. But again, kind of, if we talk about it, you even see now the 9 truck of Brady LaBeouf in the 3rd position is now falling back even farther here from this top 2, and almost Joey Doucette now is going to challenge him.
And Joey Doucette may catch up. We're watching a battle as well throughout the top 12. It was your top 11 before Robert Richards in the 48 had cleared away. They're side by side for that 12th spot. Jacob Klinkard, we saw him in the outside wall at a turn 4 a couple laps back. That's the 3 of Chris Cinnamon to the inside, the 27 in the background of the 21 rather, not the 27. That's Trey Pitts and that bright red and yellow Chevy Silverado. Dana Shepard behind them. We saw how good Dana Shepard was at Daytona and pushing in the draft. It was a stellar performance out of the 45, and he's just trying to hold on to a top 15. He will hang back behind Pitts, and they will settle things out just as quickly as we take notice of them. So I'm guessing there is a trend somewhat here, Ian, where we see an attempted pass for position. We see guys go side by side, and then just as soon as we talk about it, it's already over, but they're side by side again.
Yeah, and all this side-by-side action we're seeing kind of strings out the field a little bit, and then contractions. It's almost like an accordion effect where we see a little bit of a battle here between the 3 of Cinnamon and the 5 truck there of Klinkard there. It looks like the 3 of Cinnamon got a little bit loose, but it really kind of gives an ebb and flow to the rest of this pack where you have little groups now starting to form based on who's racing and who's running single file.
And it's going to alter the approach in the strategy for stage number 3, of course. Based on the situation where you are track position wise, you may be looking to get some extra risky calls in your strategy book if you end up in a certain place by stage 3 that you don't want to be in. And we'll just see if that ends up as the case. So with these guys breaking away so far from each other. On our first run, we had 5 trucks in the main group. Right now, we're looking at about roughly 8. The last truck in it, with a decent margin to the driver behind, is the 23 of Stephen Thomas. Devin Painter holds on to the top 9, although he's roughly 0.7 of a second away from that Toyota Tundra TRD Pro up in front. So now it's more of a full-on spread, more of a growth of the pool of drivers here from 5 to 8. So we'll see if it maintains that way. But one thing I am looking at, Ian, is this potential battle for the lead. Ted Wade is there, and he is not afraid to show that bumper to Tyler Dittmer and say, hey, I'm here, and I'm a little bit faster than you. I'm going to try to make this move. He has yet to do it just yet, but he's looking.
Yeah, I've been watching that battle here for a few laps, and it looks like Ted Wade is just slowly kind of trying to bide his time and maybe possibly wait for a mistake out of Tyler Dittmer, or just wait for the right time where he knows he's got a really good run to try to make his move. But he's just been kind of sitting there right on the bumper, almost Rusty Wallace style, kind of taking that 2 approach and bringing it to his own here is Ted Wade, and just sitting on the back bumper of the 34 and making him think about his next move.
And we talk about taking opportunities here. The opportunity may unfold for the driver hanging in third, the guy who's at the full circle of this entire story, Brady LaBeouf in the 9 truck. If he's watching Ted Wade putting the dance moves on Tyler Dittmer here, looking for the lead, LaBeouf could say, all right, this is an open door, this is a look. And as Ted Wade moved to the outside, he's going to wash up in the middle of 1 and 2. So Brady LaBeouf invited back to the party in the top 3.
Yeah, as we have a look now on board with our NRE power cam here on the 9 truck of Brady LaBeouf, he has a great front row view of this battle here between Ted Wade and Tyler Dittmer. And you kind of mentioned there, it seems like every time that Ted Wade gets on the outside of Dittmer, the truck kind of washes out from underneath him and he has to kind of regroup and try to reel him back in again. But all that's doing for the 9 truck is allowing him to get back into this battle for the lead.
And if for Ted Wade here, you have to be careful, and I figure that's why he immediately moved down low. Of course, he is still trying to set up this move for P1, but at the moment, if he stays behind this 34 and holds on a line, which he won't this time around, he'll look up top into 3 and 4 once again for the race lead. That 9 truck could be looming on the inside. That time, a better run to the middle of the corner out of 3 and 4. Dittmer will give Ted Wade the space. Here comes the 2, almost contact through the front straightaway, and the trial. Here comes Ted Wade outside for the lead, turn 1. Contact, and he's around. Sideways goes Wade. He'll save it, but the caution will wave before the whole field gets to him, and some drama ensues between your top 2 leaders.
And it almost looked like the 34 truck of Tyler Dittmer there, Kenneth. The last couple of laps was giving Ted Lane the outside line, almost inviting him, saying, hey, if you're going to make this pass, you're going to have to make it on the outside. We saw them running down the backstretch, and Tyler Dittmer took a really exaggerated inside line into the corner there and went again for it in 1 and 2 and almost washed up a little bit and maybe got into the 2 of Ted Wade there. Well, he definitely did, but I don't know if he washed up or if Ted Wade just cut down a little bit there, but that's going to really shake up the top 5 here.
And remember our point about the right front wearing, and if you push it a little bit too hard here in Nashville, it's going to punish you. You're going to travel up the track. It's what happened to Dittmer there in a turn 1, just trying to race Ted Wade as aggressively as he could. And I think in a way, maybe Ian was just trying to move him out of the way without actually hitting him. He was just kind of like, all right, I'll move up the track. I'll force you a little higher. I'll let you lose some momentum in the middle of the corner, and I'll take it back by arcing it down out of 2. Maybe that was the approach there, or maybe it was just he overdrove the corner, accidentally trying to race this 2 for the P1 spot. You take a look at it again, to travel up the track and the slight contact. A beautiful save though, Ian, out of the 2, and a beautiful job by Doucette and company to get away from the wiggling truck of Ted Wade. Unbelievable job by the field. Yes, the caution was thrown out by race control to prevent anybody else pretty much stacking into it, but everybody held on to that gracefully. And although we're under caution, if race control even didn't call that caution, we would have stayed green. That would have been amazing.
Yeah, and now we get a few looks at it. It looks like 2 trucks just going for the same spot there, really, Kenneth. I don't think there's any much more to it. And Ted Wade had a huge run there going in the turn run, and I think he was trying to just clear the 34, Tyler Dittmer, as fast as he possibly could, and maybe thought he was clear, and just there wasn't enough room right there. But yeah, like you mentioned, just a great save there by Ted Wade. Does have sun damage there to his 2 truck, but I don't know if it's enough to slow him down. Definitely gonna want him to be getting there to the stage break though, so he can get in and get his crew to look at it a little bit.
Yeah, it looks like the sort of the same amount of damage that Klinkart had with the hit to the outside wall. I think it's just a little less than what Klinkart suffered with the outside barrier contact. So I figure here, when it comes down to the aerodynamics on the truck, Ted Wade should be okay for the most part, but that number 2 isn't going to be very happy, or at least the decal guy isn't going to be very happy. That 2 is scrubbed off. It's very hard to see on the left side of his Silverado, but Ted Wade looks to be restarting here in 4th. And now that he fell back, of course, behind Joey Doucette and Brady LaBeouf. But, I mean, you're right, Ian. Just 2 of those drivers running for the race lead as hard as they can and trying to be as respectful as possible. These guys are very tough racers. And, of course, you know, they have each other's company on the racetrack, and they like to race one another. And we just saw a great battle there for the lead and an attempted pass there. Unfortunately, just went a little bit wrong there with the contact, but still some great stuff. And even then, Ian, you look at Ted Wade's entrance into the corner, how deep he could dive on the brakes and have the tires still cling on to the concrete surface and go around the corner. I think that was one of the most magnificent parts about watching Ted Wade cling in to the 34 for the race lead, is that entrance to the corner. Ted Wade was so much better. It was just the middle of the corner where things would start to even out. You may have to watch out for that, though. Ted Wade being harder on the brakes than everybody else. That entry could be very interesting on the pace here for Wade.
And that's where patience comes into play a little bit as well. We're only on lap 62 of 155 of this race, so you may have the run and you may be thinking, and we saw that Ted Wade was kind of stuck there behind the 34 truck, and we talked about him using the bumper a little bit possibly and how he was faster. And yeah, you may be faster than the 34 and you want that clean air, but if you know you have the truck to do it, you might have to wait there a few more laps to make your run. I think Ted Wade saw that as his opportunity to get out into the lead of this race and just maybe misjudged coming down in front of the 34 a little bit there. But we were talking about it for the last couple of laps. He did have the faster truck, so you hang on to it a little bit more, maybe take your move when you know you have it a little bit more concretely. No pun intended here at Nashville. I really didn't mean to do that at all, but that's what happens sometimes when you're a little bit impatient. I don't want to say it was necessarily a lapse in judgment by the two truck, but you get excited when you're out there battling for the lead, and sometimes things like that happen.
Could there not have been a better timed pun there with concrete and this Nashville Super Speedway? I know it wasn't necessarily intended, but still.
Yeah, that was sometimes, you know, what is it, like a broken clock twice a day or something like that. Yeah, so
it's if I said something about Homestead, if you were at Homestead. I know I wasn't on the call for that, but there probably would have been a pun out there that I would have said with a coincidence that had nothing to do with the fact that we were at the track. It just happened to go with the track. I have no idea. But nonetheless, we're ready for a restart here. Lap 64 of 155. It'll be Tyler Dittmer, of course, at the helm of the ship. It'll be Brady LaBeouf to his outside, joining him in row number 1. We saw how good Dittmer and LaBeouf have been on the recent restarts, although Dittmer has been somewhat better the last time through. Joey Doucette will be inside row 2 and 3rd. And Ted Wade, who we saw go sideways there in turn 1, he will be outside row number 2 in P4. So Pace Truck makes its way down to the inside of pit road. Two Chevrolets ready to bring us back to green. Still 17 laps to go in stage 2 for the Starbase Comics 200. Dittmer up and away. We're back under green. And here comes Joey Doucette. Inside move for second as they're blocking to turn 1.
And I was really interested to see what the restart would do for Brady LaBeouf if he was able to make that outside line work and really dive it into turn 1. But it looks like Joey Doucette, who's going to be the one that's going to be the beneficiary here of the restart. He's able to get to the inside of Ted Wade and now set his sights on the 34 of Dittmer, but Wade storms back around on the outside and kind of loses a little bit, drifts up the track, and that's going to allow the 16 to move back up in front of him, Kenneth.
And now Justin Lumpkin looks inside for 4th. First time we see your pole sitter back in the mix after just falling out of the battle. Here's Keith Haney on the backside of this as well. They're side by side around the latter half of the top 10 and your top 15. Lumpkin to the bottom, trying to hold on. Ted Wade trying to play some defense here to get back up to the very front. And a nice exit out of turn 2 for Lumpkin will be good enough, but I think Ted Wade just had a better exit that time by up top. Will clear on the outside lane. They will go single file, and Lumpkin will have to look for a crossover here on behalf of the 78. They were blocking pretty aggressively down there, Ian, in the midfield going to turn 1, so track position mattering here in the final 15 laps of stage 2 as Keith Haney goes to the inside for 5th.
And the 78 truck, too, was really pinned down there. I'm sorry, not the 78. The 87 of Lumpkin was pinned down on the bottom, wasn't able to move all the way back up the racetrack. And you saw that was going to be able to allow the 78 now to make a move towards the inside of him. But that's also able to the rest of the field, the 13, the 23, and the 48 now are all in this little pack of 5 trucks here around the 5th position and all battling hard for positions here coming to the stage end.
And a lot of these guys, especially 8th on through 10th, started 11th or worse. Stephen Thomas being the worst out of the bunch, starting 17th on the racetrack in Q. And he's made a nice move up through the field. Same deal for Robert Richards, who started 11th, 14th on the starting spot for the 4 of Adam Newbert, who's now up to the top 10. As here's a crossover move underneath. There's Newbert underneath the 48. On the backside of this, you can see it on the rear part of the screen, and they'll almost make contact coming out of turn 4. That's Chris Cinnamon in the 3, hanging out behind, just waiting for everything to calm down before he can officially make his move. And now here's maybe an attempted pass down low, or at least there was almost there for Wade on LaBeouf. As you take a look back up to the front of the field, Joey Doucette holding on for 2nd, but Brady LaBeouf not too far behind.
No, he is not, and that 9 truck is really starting to hook up now. I'm looking at the lap times, and the last time around that Brady LaBeouf had about a 10th second quicker lap than Joey Doucette there, so able to wheel in the 16 truck here and trying to just get as many stage points as he possibly can, because even though LaBeouf hasn't seen victory lane this season, Kenneth, he's been up front in the top 5 of most of our races and really getting as much points as he can without getting a win so far. So you got to think his time is coming, but really a good run to start this season and get as many points as he can heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, there's no better storyline than knocking on the door so many times, but still being the most consistent driver out on track. Of course, that win would seal away all the issues that are left here for the 9 to get to victory lane this season. But of course, a lot of opportunities left throughout the campaign, and those opportunities may come sooner than later. They've already come sooner than later, and that win may be illustriously looking closer into the future for that 9 machine as he ran down the 16. That time just about evened out. 31-1 on behalf of the Buff last lap by Joey Doucette. 31 flat, not the fastest out of your top 5. That goes to the 5th place truck in Keith Haney in the 78. So maybe some speed out of that as they'll go side by side for P number 6. That's Michael McKinnon, who has been as high as P6 all race long, looking underneath your pole sitter.
Yeah, and all that battling second on back has really allowed the 34 truck of Tyler Dittmer out in the front of our pack to kind of open up a little bit of a gap. Now has about a half-second gap on Doucette, LaBeouf, Wade, and Haney, the rest of your top 5. But you really mentioned McKinnon there, able to just quietly chip his way away at a lot of these positions. Finds himself in 6th place now. Really good run for him so far.
Yeah, it looks like just a great top 10 effort building up for that 13 to McKinnon, who started 7th. And right now, he is currently in P6. And again, like I mentioned, that's the highest it looks like he's been all race long. So for that 13, it certainly has been a consistent effort. That's basically what you want, though, at the beginning of the season if you can't get a win. And like I talked about with Brady LaBeouf, the consistency is going to matter. So that 13, putting up these finishes, it is going to be a factor later on in this year. Let's say if he can't get a win, and let's say if he is pitted up against some of the other drivers along the field for the entrance into the playoffs. A bit of a poor exit there out of turn 4 for Lumpkin, so inviting more drivers to make some more passes. Robert Richards, Adam Newbert taking a 2-for-1 at least, and Richards is going to slide in the entrance of turn 1. Maybe some contact and some help from Newbert. It'll bring Lumpkin back in it, so a sigh of relief on behalf of the 87, but that was dangerous there into turn 1.
Yeah, now Cinnamon's going to look on the outside. He's going to follow the 48 on the outside line. But I think if anybody here is looking forward to 4 fresh Goodyear tires at our next pit stop, I think it's going to be the 87 truck of Justin Lumpkin there. Kenneth, he's having a real tough time right now, finding a groove that really works for him. And you see him falling farther and farther back in the field.
And you definitely want to make those adjustments, and you're going to hope that the tires and everything else is going to help as Chris Cinnamon tried lurking to the inside and found no space, backed out of it, wiggled the truck a couple of times, once, twice, maybe 3 times, and he is caught up in a huge fight, 3 wide almost, going into turn 3. That's Devin Painter in the front of this, Jacob Klinkart against Keith Bradley, so that's one of Cinnamon's upfront motorsports teammates who has yet to go on to victory lane this season. And they're going to go side by side again. That is just outside your top 10. P12 on the racetrack. They're again going to make contact. Klinkart doing as best as he can to prevent the 29 of getting any sort of spots, but it's not going to work. And here comes Trey Pitts up top at lap 75.
Yeah, Cinnamon tried to make that dive down to the inside of Lumpkin there, and when he washed up, he tried to stay on the inside line. I think he didn't realize that the 99 truck of Devin Painter was there and washed even farther up the racetrack and really fell back. Now he's in the little gaggle of 5 trucks here battling for about 13th position, but Trey Pitts able to be the beneficiary of everything so far and move himself to the front of this little group. But yeah, that was kind of a hairy moment there for that pack 15th on back there.
And in that search for the inside line, we also do have to mention that last week at Martinsville, we did have a certain track state percentage before we went green from the paperclip over there 1 week ago. Tonight, we started with 0% on the track state. So basically, no rubber was laid down until the first handful of laps in qualifying. So basically, that has also changed the way the lines have been played. That inside line everybody's searching for, that was the detriment there for the 3 of Cinnamon as he tried to look down low. And he's going to aim to pick these spots back up. He's going against Brian Abbott this time, the 82 truck, who has wound it up into the top 15 after starting 18th tonight. So a nice pickup so far. A couple of spots there on behalf of the 82. He'll try to continue that as they will go side by side up in front of Jacob Klinkart, Keith Bradley, on the outside of Trey Pitts. So Trey Pitts will look to the bottom and will try to get away from this entire mess. It's basically all you want. They're almost about 3 wide around Chris Cinnamon, but we will turn our attention back to the front of the field where Ian, it's a Tyler Dittmer show at the front, 0.8 of a second and growing ahead of Joey Doucette. It looks like ever since Dittmer got in the clean air, he's been bye-bye the rest of the field, and he's been dominating stage 2.
Yeah, that 34 truck is really just checked out from the rest of the field, and it's almost like he's out here just on a practice run, just trying to figure out what works well. And you're starting to see it back to the rest of the field too. You kind of mentioned that the track wasn't having any rubber on it, but now that it's starting to get a little bit of rubber, we're starting to see 2, sometimes even 3 wide racing, and not just the bottom line being the dominant line, but able to make passes around the outside of the racetrack. But right now, none of that matters to our leader, Tyler Dittmer. He's just up here on Easy Street, just ticking away these laps for the next stage break.
He is sailing into the sunset, or at least the nightfall, now that the sunset is gone here from Nashville Superspeedway. He will cross the line for 76 laps to go from Lebanon, Tennessee, but it'll be the white flag in stage number 2. Joey Doucette has done a nice job holding on to second. Brady LeBeouf has not been able to make a response after getting passed by that 16, so he'll be third. Keith Haney has been setting some of the fastest laps in the top 5 as of late, so keep an eye on that 78, how good he's been specifically over the long run. He stayed ahead of Ted Wade in the 2, who currently racks up the top 5. But for Tyler Dittmer, he is in his own game for the moment out of turn 4. It is a clear look at the start-finish line, and Barney, the flag man, he will see the caution wave by race control. Tyler Dittmer wins stage 2 in the Starbase Comics 200.
And how dominant was that 34 truck in stage 1 or stage 2 here? Tyler Dittmer, just as soon as he got to the lead, Kenneth, really it was that move that we talked about where the lap car was up for, not the lap car, but the car that stayed out with no tires there, kind of just got eaten up by the rest of the field. But that's all it took for Dittmer to jump to the front and able to just hold on to it for the rest of the stage.
And going back to our topic, opportunities, and when you take it, Dittmer found his place, found the area where he can make that move, get ahead of Brady LeBeouf, who had been dominating the opening stage. And then all he needed was the clean air. All he needed was that confidence to move up front. And look where he is now, dominating stage 2. Although we've seen such a huge change in dynamic from our first stage to our second. We had that first caution at the halfway mark of stage 1. We went basically green all the way to the end of stage 2. And now the question is, what happens in stage 3? Are we going to see a change in dynamic again? Are we going to see somebody new come up to the front? We've yet to see anything crazy from Doucette or Keith Haney, but they've been around the battle. Do they amp up the energy here? And now as we enter pit road, the whole field getting their pit stops for stage number 3. And what happens from there?
And it was just watching down pit road there, Kenneth. I was kind of curious to see, we have no drivers right now that are a lap down that isn't in the garage at this time. So I was curious to see if anybody would possibly take 2 tires or even stay out here. It looks like we might have 1 truck stay out and kind of put yourself in a position where maybe you make your last stop before tires stop and then try to go from there. But it doesn't look like anybody was going to take that 2-tire strategy, at least on this stop.
Yeah, nobody taking 2 tires at the moment. Looks like 4 tires is the safest call. You'd rather be safe than sorry here on our what's going to be our longest run to the end of this race. Huck Wigington is going to join James Morris as the 2 drivers who have stayed out on the oldest set of tires. And this time as they come around through the pit lane, it will not be a second-guess decision here on Wigington. So it's going to make things interesting here, and Wigington, we'll see if he survives again. James Morris did not really have a good time through the field, knowing that he was the only guy on old tires to stay out. Wigington may suffer the same fate here, and he's got some damage on the left front, so that might also not help as well. What this is going to do, though, Ian, is potentially open things up for that driver inside row 2. It worked for Dittmer beautifully. Can it work for Joey Doucette in the 16, who will look to be inside row number 2 when we go back green?
And I would say the only advantage that Dittmer here has on the outside this time around is he was able to kind of play that strategy to his favor when it happened to him. So maybe he also understands the way to defend in this situation as well. But going to be an interesting move here because basically, with all due respect to Wigington, on tires as old as his are, he's going to be mincemeat to the rest of the field here pretty quickly. So it's going to be up to the rest of these guys to kind of navigate around him as efficiently as they can and then go back to racing the rest of the trucks around him on fresh tires.
It seems as though that's been the biggest difference, don't you think, Ian? The fact that these cars, or these trucks rather, who are staying out are playing such a big role in who goes where and how track position fares on the restart. It seems like once that old tire truck gets in the way and becomes a factor in the whole spring of things, everybody finds the lanes, everybody finds a door, everybody finds a way to get around. Morris didn't necessarily do that in the mid pack. It was mostly up at the front, but it could be the thing for Wigington if an outside move happens, or if they just split them 3 wide, maybe even 4 wide. There's guys in the mid pack who have been aggressively going at it with each other for a while for position, that they see that old tire truck and they say, hey, that's my opportunity. Use them as a pick, get around.
Yeah, and we're talking all this strategy with tires and fuel and all this and everything like that. Something else I just noticed, Kenneth, as well, is this is the Starbase Comics 200, right?
Yes.
And look who's out front. It's the Starbase Comics truck. So maybe a little bit of a sponsor strategy call here we possibly see from the 00 of Huck Wigington as well, getting some good airtime for his sponsors there. So you got to appreciate that as well.
Okay, I like that. You know, I should have noticed that earlier. You know, you caught me on that one. That was a nice catchy. And Starbase Comics there on the 00 of Wigington. So maybe this is both a strategy call and a TV time call. I've had that before. Drivers moving up to the field on the yellows, or even making some calls just to get their truck on screen. Of course, these guys have been fantastic so far over Season 5 of the NASRA Triple M Pulling Truck Series, and Wigington, one of those star drivers in this entire field. Great to have him here. We'll see, though, how he can manage this next restart. It is going to be a handful for him, and maybe much more. Pace truck makes its way down to pit road. Will cross the line with 71 laps to go, and that restarting through the whole field off guard. They're 3 wide about for second.
Yeah, it's stacked up second, third, and fourth, and we're going to see possibly 3 wide here heading into turn 1. But yeah, whatever Huck Wigington there on the jump of the restart really threw the rest of the field. I think it was a clean restart, but yeah, really just threw second, third, all the way back just into, and I think we have a truck spinning possibly back of the pack there. I don't know if I saw that or if I just saw somebody get out of line there and really dive down to the bottom. Yeah, it was the 87 truck there. Not sure what happened to him, but in the background there coming off the 2, Kenneth, I saw him all the way down to the bottom of the racetrack.
Your pole sitter Lumpkin in trouble. Looks like he just got loose out of turn 2 by his lonesome underneath the 4 of Adam Newbert. Fortunately was able to save it, but the caution will not wave, and he loses all that track position. But guess who's moved up front? They passed Huck Wigington in the last couple of corners. LeBuff looks to the inside on Dimmer for P2, but it's Joey Doucette to the race lead for the first time in Starbase Comics 200.
And Joey Doucette already has 1 win on the season already. That came at Homestead Miami Speedway, a track somewhat similar to this here at Nashville Super Speedway. I guess you could say the banking is somewhat similar, and the track kind of runs the same. I would guess kind of a little bit here, but kind of finds itself at home at these 1.5-mile tracks with low to moderate banking.
Seems to be where Joey Doucette is at his best, and you talked about it, the win at Homestead Miami Speedway, a track that isn't necessarily in that cookie cutter category of racetracks. When you think about the Texases, the Charlottes, the Kansases, the Las Vegases of the world, Homestead just 2 straightaways and the corners in between with progressive banking. And this track being as unique as it is Nashville Super Speedway, it's allowing Joey Doucette to really show out his raw pace. And what this could do, Ian, is separate himself from the other guys in the field, the Upfront Motorsports duo of Chris Cinnamon and Ted Wade, who have wins this year. If the 16 can get to the checkered flag first for the 2nd time in the first 4 races of Season 5, it'll just be basically putting himself in his own category and running away. I think that's going to give him a huge momentum boost, but that is definitely not confirmed yet, as Tyler Dittmer and Brady LeBeouf have brought themselves back in it. They still got speed, and they're trying to hunt down on the 16.
Yeah, we saw how much Brady LeBeouf had the check up there off of turn 2 as we watch this onboard camera here as he tries to chase down the 34 of Dittmer and the 18 of Doucette. But both of these trucks really have a lot of speed here. We've seen all night long that truck that's able to get out into the lead, gets clean air, and kind of starts to check away from the rest of the pack. Not the case here for Joey Doucette. Not sure if he hasn't found the line yet or if the track's changing for him a little bit, but really under fire now from the 2 trucks behind him.
You know, and after round 2, where Joey Doucette got his win, it was 9th place in the point standings for the playoffs for the 34 of Tyler Dittmer. Obviously, things changed after what was the chaotic race at the virtual Martinsville Speedway 1 week ago. But Dittmer has been in the conversation ever since Daytona and even Homestead Miami. And here he is with a potential chance to get around the 16 of Doucette. His last attempt failed. LeBuff tried to go to the inside, and now it's an outside charge, just stepping into the clean air, much like Ted Wade did on the 34. So maybe learning just a little bit. A nice exit at a turn 2, and here comes Dimmer to the outside for the lead once again.
Yeah, and you saw Dittmer there. He almost kind of diamonded the corner there in 1 and 2. Kenneth was able to get a really drive off down the backstretch there and able to try to sneak his nose on the outside of the 16 there, but almost kind of checked up from the 9 going on the inside of him, and that was able to help the 16 stay out in the lead here, but it's still a 3-way battle heading back into turn 1.
And it looked like out of turn 4 as well, Ian, the 34 hit the bump in the middle of the last 2 corners, and that bump can really send you up the track. It looked like it was going to hurt Dittmer's chances of contending still against the 16, but in fact, it kept him there. Coming to the front straightaway, and he is still there. LeBuff going to make it a 3-horse fight. He'll feel the space on the inside of the racetrack, so now he'll work against Tyler Dittmer. And here's the magic of going side by side. Ian, here comes everybody else, 4th on back.
Yeah, and you mentioned the last time around that Dittmer got those bumps and it sent him up the racetrack. It sent him up the racetrack again, but he was able to handle it a lot better that time around and able to drive off the corner. But here, now we have almost a 4, making even a 5-way battle for the lead with Ted Wade, and we're 3 wide heading into turn 3 here. Haney going to try to take the inside line, but LeBuff on the middle able to make it work and kind of squeeze out in front of the 34. The 34 is going to have to check up here. And even with all this happening behind him, Joey Doucette is still not able to check out from the rest of the truck, so now we see the 78 of Haney trying to make a move for the front. Kenneth, we haven't seen that too much this tonight.
Haney tried to block there on LeBuff. It looked like a super speedway move at Talladega or Daytona, but he is trying his best to stay up behind your race leader. LeBuff now makes a charge up top, and everybody packing in with 62 laps to go in the Starbase Comics 200. Haney, who had a lot of pace, by the way, in that long green flag run to set us up for stage 2. It's not surprising that he's finally breaking out the speed and using it to his advantage as he stays underneath the 9. It's going to help Doucette break away for just a little bit back to turn 1, but this fight clearly not over yet. LeBuff officially clears for P2.
And we're paying attention to all the leaders here, Kenneth, but this is about a gap of 1/10 of a second from first all the way back into 10th place. So not only the leaders battling, but the entire top 10 just battling for position here, trying to set themselves up in a good spot for that possible last green flag stop, and then try to cycle back out in a position where they can make a good finish out of tonight's race.
It is basically 1st through 9th. You are right. The gap is unbelievably short. And from race leader to 9th, it's 1.1 seconds overall. That's how close the field is right now. And it was basically top 10 all crunched up together before there was slight contact between the 29 and the 48. They almost about wrecked each other on the back straightaway. Luckily, they keep it green. But how close this field is just based off that one little move by Brady LeBuff and Tyler Dittmer to go for the race lead on Joey Doucette. It just changed the whole magnitude of this race, and now here comes Adam Newbert, who, by the way, started all the way back in 14th, and he's up to P6.
Yeah, about 12 positions. You can't really complain too much. If you said you're going to start there and you're going to end up in P6, I wouldn't be complaining too much as well. But that Ford truck looks really slick out here under the lights at Nashville, and really just making a good run on the outside here, trying to make a move on it. Looks like the 23 truck of Thomas there, and he's on the outside line here. And Thomas really trying to push up the racetrack and make it really hard for the Ford truck, but that Ford truck's working on the outside right now, Kenneth.
And Newbert doing a solid job of holding the middle. That time Thomas basically denied him a closer line to the bottom as he basically almost missed that yellow line down there in 1 and 2. They're going to remain side by side. This is again a fight for P6 on the racetrack. Going to lose some time here to Tyler Dittmer, and they're going to bring in the 13 of Michael McKinnon, who we've talked about has been consistent all night long in that Velocity sponsor number 13. And in fact, he may go for a move himself. That time thought better of it, and we'll have Robert Richards look to the inside in turn 1. So we continue to have a tag around for position. I don't think I've ever seen a race like this at Nashville Super Speedway where the margin of error is so ridiculously small. Like if we were at a super speedway, you make one mistake and somebody's on your inside, somebody's on your outside, somebody's somewhere going for the spot.
And it seems like at the beginning of every stage, we've seen this kind of shuffle towards the beginning of the pack as well. You saw at the beginning of stage number 2 that that's when Brady LeBuff was stumbled a little bit and Tyler Dittmer was able to drive away from the rest of the field. And now in stage 3, we saw Dittmer there was the unfortunate sufferer of the consequences of that little fray there we saw towards the beginning of the stage, finds himself in the 5th spot now. So really, if you're the leader at the beginning of these stages, it's almost like, watch out. It's almost like you mentioned, we're the last lap of Daytona. It's almost that dangerous to be the leader here on the first lap of a stage tonight, it seems.
You can imagine just how nervous Joey Doucette might just be, looking in that rearview mirror and just seeing everybody and anyone trying to take that spot away for first. But the good thing for Doucette is he's played some solid defense, has been able to hold his own here in P1. So despite all the challenges, despite the guys going on the outside, inside, dive bombing corners, just to get to his quarter panel or to the side of his race truck, it hasn't been enough to phase Joey Doucette to the point where he just backs out and succeeds the race lead. Keith Haney, though, has been putting up a charge of a lifetime. We haven't seen this effort out of the 78 throughout the first 2 stages, but I think, Ian, we're missing a point of conversation where you can run those first 2 stages and just run your own race, be consistent, but if you have pace, at 3rd stage, you run wild, and that's exactly what Haney's doing right now.
Yeah, and he's able to get up to the back bumper of the 16 right now and able to even give him a little bit of a touch here heading down in the turns 3 and 4. And that 78 truck is fast, and we've seen him all season long just kind of run up front there in the top 10, top 5 and kind of chip away, but never really be a factor for the lead. But right now he's taking a look on the inside of Joey Doucette heading into turn 1, Kenneth.
Pushed a little high out of turn 4 went Doucette, and there's a switch over. New race leader this time by, give it to the Ford F-150 of Keith Haney, who will try to break away. Ted Wade has brought himself into the battle. Maybe we'll drag in Tyler Dimmer and Adam Newbert back to the conversation. You were watching Brady LeBoeuf under heavy fire, and I think Ian LeBoeuf starting to reach the cliff in this run. Maybe used up too much of the Goodyear Eagles. I've seen many times entrance of the corner. He pulled that Ted Wade strat, just diving it deep in the corner, washing it up, and just trying to bring up the speed back on the exit of either turn 2 or turn 4, and it's not working in this long run as he slides up the track once again, and Robert Richards gets the full invitation to make a move inside for 8th.
And that's really the catch-22 when you find yourself in an early race or an early stage battle, is how much do I run a sacrifice of my truck up front in this battle for track position versus what I can do in the long run and maybe sitting back right now. So maybe even a little bit of that as well, maybe a little bit of a strategy there from Brady LeBoeuf, sitting back in that battle instead of trying to push and get as much as he can out of it, knowing he's got to hang on to this truck for a long run potentially.
And of course, this will be the longest run of the race if we, of course, do stay green. We went green with about, I'd say, 72, 74 laps to go. We have a 53 to 58 lap window with the 100% fuel capacity we have on these NASCAR Camping World Truck Series machines. So watch out for that as we enter into the final 50 laps of this Starbase Comics 200 here for the 5th race, or the 4th race rather, of the Season 5 NASRA Triple M Pulling Truck Series. As you continue watching the fight for P8, Robert Richards, Brady LeBoeuf going at it. LeBoeuf will slide up the track, but the run on the outside, too good. And Ian, you brought up a good point as well. The development of that outside line. It's not just the inside being the fastest. I think there's something to look forward to there. If you're in that middle lane, there's more grip now. There's been more rubber laid down there. There's been some more drivers willingly enough being able to go up there and just test out the waters. It's helped that semi-outside line develop some grip, and we're seeing the fruition of it building right now.
Yeah, and 50 laps to go. What a better time for the second line of the track to wear in than right now. And something I noticed while you were talking about the different grooves in the tracks as well is Justin Haney in the 78 truck, our leader, was able to get out to about a half-second lead on Doucette. It was kind of perplexing to me when Doucette was out in front of the pack, how he wasn't able to break away even with all those trucks battling behind him. And now we see him under attack from the 34 truck and Tyler Dittmer. So I don't know if he's able to just not find the lines right now, or maybe it's something when that truck is out in the lead that doesn't handle right with him, but wasn't able to drive away to as much of a lead as we saw everybody else who's able to get clean air as we see now. The 16 truck bumped up a little bit. I don't know if that was contact with the 34 or what there, Kenneth.
I believe there was, and he just went up the track, and that just gave the free spot, or free 2 spots, to the 2 of Ted Wade. He said, very much thank you, I'll be on my way. And to the race lead, Keith Haney here, as Doucette will calm down. I think he will let off the fight here against Tyler Dittmer. That lap truck also in the way as well. Jose Luis Rivera in the 20, he becomes the 3rd truck 1 lap down or more. So Ian, I think all your talk, unfortunately, about all the drivers staying on the lead lap apart from our 2 DNFs, that's no more here. We have 2 trucks 1 lap down. That is Rivera, Christopher Blanchard in the 19, and Huck Wigington, who has fallen 3 laps down. Remember, Wigington on the most recent restart did not take 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles, nor did he take fuel. So think it's going to be interesting to see how Wigington tries to get back in the race with 47 laps to go. You looked at a slight battle with Keith Bradley in the mix there, Jacob Klinkart, Trey Pitts. That is 12th through 14th on the racetrack, but all of them have, again, gone single file. And then the focus back to Ted Wade, looking forward to catching Keith Haney. I think Wade definitely liked that, Ian. Seeing the 16 and the 34 going side by side, see the mistake, see the open space, and just take it.
Yeah, and Ted Wade there, maybe a little bit of a makeup from the racing gods, where he was put onto the wall earlier in this race, and two guys getting together was able to open the door for him to take second place away from Dittmer there. But Dittmer now making a loop to the inside of Ted Wade. Definitely has the speed in that truck still. It was just a minor hiccup for him, and he's looking to get himself back up to the front again. We know how fast the 34 truck has been all night long.
You know, if there's one thing or one word you can use to describe Dittmer tonight, it has been relentless. No matter what happens, he has always found a way to get back in the fight. And with 45 laps to go, that pass against Ted Wade may be good enough to set him up clearly for what could potentially be our first and last round of green flag pit stops. Of course, we've only had the one caution tonight apart from our stages. I believe 2 cautions here tonight. One of them being Ted Wade going sideways, the other one a spin and a crash involving Derek Kilgore and the 53 of CJ Fondahl. So we've had 2 on-track incidents. One of them could have gotten away without a yellow, but race control did decide to pull the trigger on that. But other than that, we've had a very clean race from Nashville, Ian. I'd say that it's definitely a nice thing to see these guys go for the long run. And, you know, unlike Martinsville, where we had so many drivers close together making contact, tonight has been all about your long run pace and how disciplined you can be as a race driver.
I think we kind of expected that coming in the Nashville as well. We talked about how difficult the track surface is and how different Nashville is from any other racetrack that we go to here on the circuit, especially this season in the NASRA Pulling M Triple Series. But really, here what you have to do is just manage it. Really, you don't have to worry about cautions, you don't have to worry about restarts as much, and you can kind of get yourself into a bit of a groove. Whereas we saw Martinsville, it was just a war of attrition, and whoever got up front just had to hang on until the next yellow fell. So I think that really does a lot for, as you said, the long run trucks and also the drivers that kind of can manage the condition of a truck throughout a run.
And is definitely true, as we will enter our 41 lap to go marker in the Starbase Comics 200. Keith Haney still in the race lead by 9/10 of a second. Last time by set of 31.53. Dittmer setting a 31.524. 5.45 this time for Dittmer as they cross the line. 5.84 for Haney in the 78. And I've been looking at the stats for the 34 of Tyler Dittmer and called him relentless. And I think the first couple of races in the season have been the best. If you're that 34, as they will get around the 00 of Huck Wigington. And here's the 17 of Brandon Bullock making a first stop to pit road, 31st on the racetrack. So not sure whether this call is just to get to the end of the race. It is rather early in the stint, so we'll see exactly what happens. But that 34 Tyler Dittmer, an average finish of 11th. Had the poorest finish of the season so far. It came at Daytona to start off. He finished 27th, but he has finished 3rd 2 races in a row since at Homestead and at Martinsville, with that pole at Martinsville Speedway, and then back at Homestead in Miami, he started inside the top 10, and tonight doing the very same thing, starting inside the top 3, and he's been leading the race. He won stage 2, got those playoff points, and he has been unbelievable. Not the race leader by any means right now, but I think a lot to look forward to momentum-wise if you're that 34 of Dittmer, how good he's been in the opening 4 races.
And there's a lot to be said about consistency, even in a format that lends itself more reward to a race winner, because I don't think there's going to be, I think we have 12 playoff spots. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Kenneth, but I believe we have 12 playoff spots, and I don't think we're going to see 12 individual leaders. So someone who could go up there and make consistent points every single week, even if they're not able to get that race win, probably has a really good chance of still making the playoffs.
Oh, we have 16 into the playoffs this season. And it was basically tied coming out of Homestead between Cody Knott and Jose Luis Rivera, but obviously ignored that for many reasons. One of them obviously being the fact that we're only 4 races into the season after tonight. There is so much still left to decide before we even begin to talk about the implications and the drama and what may come out of strategy for points and all that. So, you know, still a long way from that, but there is still some merit in talking about how consistent drivers like Dittmer and even others are. Joey Doucette getting the win, and in many cases like that. We have drivers on pit road here in the final 37, Ian. We saw some back markers take some trips down to pit road. Jonathan Munda in the 15, who was hanging in the back, the 17 of Brandon Bullock. But now we have some of our main contenders in the front pack, starting with the 13 of Michael McKinnon, followed by Brady LaBeouf in the 9.
And it's always fun to see the dominoes start to fall and see what part of the field goes to pit road first. We see some of the mid-pack and some of the later pack drivers trying to make a stop now and maybe try to get ahead of the leaders here and play possibly into a caution cycling in their favor. But even with these leaders on these tires and only, I would say, 20 to 30 laps old at this point, some of the lap trucks that are getting back onto the track right now are just flying past the leaders. So tires are definitely going to start to play a factor in this race right now as we go into this stint with drivers starting to pit. You can't stay out too long if you're the leaders, because that gap is going to start to evaporate.
Definitely true. Adding on to the list, Adam Canwell, Lucas Whitehead, Cody Knott, Daniel Shepard, Jacob Klinkart, and Tyler Dittmer went down all by his lonesome there in the top 3. And so second place went down pit road. Nobody else, though, in the main pack has decided to come in. There's a look at your race leader coming out of turn 2. That is James Morrison, the 47 on the low side, making way for your leader. And Ted Wade will now occupy second. Joey Doucette to third. No calls right now from any of them to come on for pit road service. Actually, never mind. Here comes second place, Ted Wade, all by himself. Never mind on that as well. Adam Newberg going to follow him in.
Yeah, and Ted Wade there really locking up the brakes, and you saw the truck wiggling, really slowing down. The pit road speed is very difficult. We mentioned at the beginning of our broadcast here, Kenneth, how that transition off of the banking onto pit road is so hard to slow down. Going to be interesting to see if any of our drivers possibly take a speeding penalty onto pit road. At this point, that would pretty much kill your race if you're one of our leaders.
And also thinking about the discrepancy in going down for pit road for tires. Keith Haney, now your leader, comes in. We'll see if Joey Doucette follows him in. Answer is no. So Doucette and Stephen Thomas will occupy first and second. This most likely will give third to the 99 of Devin Painter, who is bringing Keith Bradley with him to stay out of the racetrack. And then rounding out the top 5, the 51 of Tony Smith, who started deep in 28th in tonight's Starbase Comics 200. But going back to the topic of what I said, the change in the tire discrepancy, pitting a lap later, pitting 2 laps later, pitting at different laps than most of the others at the front of the field is going to matter because, again, your Nashville Super Speedway, concrete surface, it eats up the tires quicker than you would expect. So you definitely would want the freshest set of tires for the last 30-odd laps in this race.
Yeah, tires are going to be crucial, especially if we get into a situation possibly where we go into overtime and have a green-white checkered, and we may even see drivers at that point come down and get another change of tires if they still have a set remaining. So tires definitely an important factor in the last 32 laps of this race, Kenneth.
So with the stops happening right now, Tony Smith is the first truck 1 lap down. He has taken a trip down for service, so that'll give the lucky dog spot to that 34 of Dittmer, who should, once everything cycles out, will be your net race leader based on how things go. But for right now, still awaiting the decision by the 16 and company. I believe I just heard Devin Painter, who's riding in third, chip up over the radio. That may be a call to head down. And now here comes first and second. A little bit of a wide anchor move there from the 23 machine. So he'll break even with the 16. There is indeed Devin Painter in as well. Keith Bradley to follow in 4th in this group. So your leader, Joey Doucette, in, and this should cycle Tyler Dittmer to the lead as he unlaps himself into the corner. I believe this is coming out of turn 2 for him.
Yeah, and a really good move there by the truck on the outside of the 16 of Joey Doucette to move on the outside there and not slam on the brakes and stay behind Joey there. He knows he has the wide pit lane, and all those times and all those spots even on pit road are important, Kenneth. If you can get into your pit box, quicker or at the same time of that guy that you're next to, you do have a chance to beat him off of pit road. So every single little moment counts here, especially on pit road and getting on at the speed and off of the racetrack cleanly.
what you want to do as well is maximize the amount of time of going into the stall and getting out. You don't want to waste any extra time. And the worst thing is you don't want to get a speeding penalty. I don't think we've seen that out of any of the drivers so far here tonight. Most of the entrances have been rather clean. They've been rather conservative as well. I haven't seen too many lockups out of the field, so I don't think we're going to be worrying about race control handing off any penalties to drivers on pit road, whether they have to stay in. And for our leaders, it hasn't been the case either, but that also is something you have to consider. Just going on a pit road and trying to maximize as much as you can, while also making sure you don't overstep the boundaries and end up with a penalty that can take you out of this race. Because if we stay green, you go 1-2 laps down, and we don't have a caution till then, your race is over when it comes down to running for this checkered flag tonight in the Starbase Comics 200. But now that we're bringing the field together, still 3 trucks left to pit before we officially cycle through. Dittmer is your net race leader. But guess who's behind him, Ian? The number 2 of Ted Wade, the winner at Martinsville, with fresh tires. The 9 of Brady LaBeouf with fresh tires. The 4 of Adam Newbert, who broke ahead of your former race leader, Keith Haney, on fresh tires. There is a lot to look forward to if you're Ted Wade on back. And here comes Wade closing in on the 34.
Yeah, and these battles right now before the field cycles out are possibly even more critical than the battles in the last 10 laps of the race. If you can get the track position now and really get into a position where you can run your line and run your race, you don't have to worry about battling another truck. You can really conserve your equipment and try to make it so that you have something at the end of this race if you do have to fend somebody off.
And already they're going at it for what's going to be 3rd, 4th, 5th into our tire strategy. Keith Haney underneath. Brady LaBeouf now potentially looking at Adam Newbert next in the black and orange VFW rather, number 4, Ford F-150. The 2 Fords going at it. Jason Morales, Taylor Peacock, the 1st and 2nd trucks, still yet to pit on a stint of 49 and 48 respectively. So we are expecting them to hit pit road before this race is over into the final 25 laps from the virtual Nashville Super Speedway. But it's all on Tyler Dittmer to just hold on. But Ted Wade is intimidating this 34. He is there out of turn 4. Could there be a pass for the net race lead?
Well, we saw earlier in the race, Ted Wade tried to make that dive to the outside heading into turn 1. Will he do it here, Kenneth? You see how he's able to brake so much harder going into the corner. I don't know, though, if that's going to able to get him to get the run off into the backstretch that he needs there to get to the Dittmer, and it won't. But you're able to see how much he's able to drive in the turn 1 and really just drive past that driver on the inside line and try to make it stick that way. But that really takes your drive off coming out onto the backstretch.
Shades of them going at it for the race lead, and where Ted Wade got spun sideways and saved the race truck. It's happening all over again, and much like that last run, Ian, the 2 is looking up top. He does not want to go back down low. He wants to be as high as he can be to that quarter panel. They're going to pass the lap truck. That is Jose Luis Rivera. They're going to clear him without any troubles. Adam Newbert and Keith Haney have since simmered down for the fight in P3 in the net standings. But Ted Wade still looking and eyeing on this number 34, the Lizardworks Chevy Silverado, coming to the final 22 laps from Nashville.
Yeah, we're able to see if he's able to use this clean air to his advantage. The 34 truck of Tyler Dittmer, once Peacock and Morales pit, he will be the race leader. But right now, Ted Wade knows that he has to have that clean air and have his truck out in front if he's going to hang on, because it's so hard to pass here once those tires start to wear in, Kenneth. You really can't find a line where the tires will lock down and really grip up well enough for you able to drive past other trucks. So he knows how important this battle for track position is early in this run.
It is going to be important, but as well, if we stay green for the next 22 laps, the fastest one on the long runs in both stage 1 and stage 2 have not been any of the 2 running for the lead right now. It's been that 78 of Keith Haney, and he is there. Adam Newbert, they're catching up now that Ted Wade is starting to put some of the fire on the rear bumper of Tyler Dittmer's 34 machine. So it may not be just 2 running for the checkered. It's going to be all 4 of these guys, 2 Fords and 2 Chevys. Lap traffic also in the mix as well, Ian, along with Jason Morales, who's up the road a couple of seconds. He is still yet to come down for his final stop of service. So these trucks up in the front may pose as a pivotal pick or a pivotal swing in the race lead.
We mentioned how important it is to have clean air. It's not only important to have clean air, but it's important to not have to worry about trucks bearing down on you from behind because you're battling with somebody else. That's why it's so important to make these passes as quickly as you can. As we see, lap traffic here is going to start to be a factor. They're staying down on the inside line right now, but this possibly will split up the 1 and 2 truck from the 3 and 4 truck right now. But the one truck, they're doing a good job staying out of the way of the leaders, knowing that this is a battle for the lead with 20 laps to go.
And Morales in the one, he was running second on the lead lap, not a lap truck. He was basically just running for position, trying to hold out as much as he can. There's a lap truck up in front. And it's going to be Huck Wigington. But they're going to clear him without any troubles to turn 3. And that's a solid exit out of Ted Wade in the 2. Could it be enough to hang close? Answer is yes, down the front straightaway, but again, they will reel in the 4 and the 78, and they are there to the outside in turn 1.
Yeah, and right now this looks almost like we're at Daytona or at Talladega. You see two lines almost forming up here, and it seems like that outside line is trying to push around the 2 of Ted Wade right now, and he doesn't want to be on the bottom. We know that, so he's trying to get himself all the way up to that top side and try to run where he's comfortable. And right now, the more laps that he's down on the bottom side, the more positions we see him continue to lose as the 78 of Haney now all over the back bumper of Ted Wade.
And as they cross the line for 19 laps to go, Taylor Peacock was the last one to stay out. He has finally hit pit road. So that conversation for net race lead is over. Now it's just official race lead. Keith Haney has moved into 3rd, gets by the 2 of Ted Wade out of turn 2. Newbert trying to track down the 34 of Dimmer. And what's most notable here, Ian, is that the 78 of Haney is now 15 laps into his stint. He's 1 lap better than Adam Newbert ahead of him and 3 laps better on tires than the 34 leading this race, coming to 17 laps to go. So again, like I mentioned, tire discrepancy is mattering at a track that eats up tires more than any other. Adam Newbert still trying to hunt down on the 34. No avail, though, for him so far.
Yeah, the last time by, Dittmer and Newbert were faster than Haney, but the more they continue to battle, we've seen it all night long, is this going to play into the 78 truck's hands. And Dittmer and Neubert, they've got to make a pass on one another quickly or figure out what they're going to do, or they're just going to burn up their tires more, and that dire difference that you spoke of is going to be even more of an advantage to the 78 truck.
And look at that, out of turn 4, they caught the lap truck. Brandon Bullock, the Ford, did at the worst possible time. He checked up dramatically, and now it opened the door. 78, Keith Haney to the outside for 2nd. It is going to at least make the 34 breathe out a sigh of relief for a moment, knowing that he doesn't have to deal with the truck hounding on his rear bumper. But they're going to come back sooner than later. Haney now single files out with Newbert, so Haney has a direct view of the 34 truck to 15 laps to go in this Starbase Comics 200 and the NASRA Triple M Pulling Truck Series. And now I got to ask Ian, if you're that 78 of Haney, do you push now with 15 to go, or do you still hold on to that long run that he's been so good at for so long tonight?
Well, I think he just made such quick work there, 3rd and 4th. I think he knows he's got a little bit of a gap to reel in here to catch Dittmer. So I don't think he's going to try to drive the wheels off it right now. But I think as soon as he gets to the back bumper of Dittmer, we've seen how important it is to make these passes quickly and not get caught up behind the leader there and try to settle into a groove. So I think once you see him get to the back bumper, that's when you're going to see the aggression start to ramp up.
0.03 of a second roughly to the good for Keith Haney on that last time by 31.391 for the 78, a 31.425 for Dittmer. And although Dittmer has been basically pressured this entire run, coming to 13 laps to go, he's held his own, much like Joey Doucette did in that last stretch of green flag racing. But the time is running out. Keith Haney needing to make a move, or maybe a potential caution to help his situation out. From Nashville Super Speedway, Haney and Dimmer both looking for their first win of Season 5. And basically everyone in the top 3, in, none of them winners so far in the opening races. Ted Wade is the only group out of drivers in the top 5. And he is in a group of 2 for the entire top 10, rather through a group of 3 in the top 10 who have won at least one race this season, including Chris Cinnamon. So a lot of new drivers eligible to get their first win as Newbert washes up out of turn 4, and here comes Wade inside for 3rd.
And something else that just came to mind for me as well, Kenneth, as we've watched all night long as the 34 truck goes deeper and deeper into a run, it seems like he gets better. So that leads to another level of urgency for all these drivers to try to get to the back bumper of the 34 and make that pass as quickly as they possibly can. As you see, Haney now is starting to able to get to the back bumper a little bit there. You saw him just flash by as we watched the 2 truck of Ted Wade, but you see that gap is starting to get smaller and smaller, but he's just not able to kind of burst that air bubble that the 34 truck has created and able to get all the way up to his back bumper to make a pass.
You are right. It feels like there's more hesitation here out of everybody second on back to get around this 34, and this is definitely not going to help. Maybe it does, Actually, it does. For the 78, somehow he gets to the outside of the 34 of Dimmer. That's lap truck Taylor Peacock trying to unlap himself. Remember, he was your race leader on the oldest set of tires and had to pit last and gave way for all these guys. Now just trying to get back on the lead lap, and they're almost 3 wide. Haney looked for a moment, backed out of it, and Peacock will give the space to the inside for Haney into turn 1.
Yeah, and Haney now able to work the bottom side. You haven't really seen him work that to his advantage now, so a little bit of a difference there, but he saw the opportunity that we've talked about opportunities all night long with the lap car there, unlapping himself with the 81 with the fresher tires, able to make to the move to the bottom. Haney tried to follow him through, but wasn't able to make it to stick. 34 hangs on to the lead, coming to 9 laps to go here for Tyler Dittmer.
And you got to ask in that moment with that lap car of Peacock whether Haney had basically just wasted that opportunity to easily take P1 away. But I think the answer would just negate itself immediately at a turn 2, an arcing approach for the 78. That'll give him some momentum. Dittmer looks low to block. He says, I'll give you the outside, but I know I've got the fastest line here in Nashville. Haney will accept. There's Adam Cantwell, one of our biggest movers all night tonight. And Haney immediately backs out. Dittmer, even though he's on 2 lap older tires than Haney, he's playing a smart game here, coming to the last 8 laps here from Nashville.
Yeah, and he's driving a really defensive line as well, too. He's making it really hard for Haney to arc into the corner the way that he wants to. I think Haney is trying to kind of diamond the corner. We've seen some drivers doing that now that there's some rubber laying into the racetrack, and it's helping them get a good run. But the line that Dittmer's running right now is kind of making it hard for Haney to do that. Kind of has to make him check up, and he's not able to roll the corner as efficiently as he'd like right now.
And what's also good about this is that the tire gain for Haney, I think, will start to basically dissolve in the final 7 laps here. Now that lap after lap after lap stuck in dirty air, the 34, and then getting put into more dirty air with the lap trucks, Peacock weaving his way through, and then that last instance there with the lap truck, it has certainly affected the style that Haney has been accustomed to in the first 2 stages. Here's a nice grouping here around Keith Bradley. This is outside top 10. Devin Painter holding on to the final spot. Trey Pitts against Jacob Klinkart into turn 3. So although we do have P1 up for a battle, we've got the top 10, some nice points on for stake as well.
Yeah, and give a shout out to the Klinkart there in the 5 truck, the Kyle Larson inspired paint. He had a rough beginning of this race. You see the damage on the right side of that truck, had to pit early and is able to slowly and quietly move his way back up the field. A little bit of possibly close contact there, but we have a spinner there. 82 into the wall.
Yes, Brian Abbott is around. He gets slammed by the 94 of Eric Zimmerman. Caution flag out with 6 laps to go. And that could be the saving grace for everyone who thought they were out of it, as Tyler Dittmer will come to a slow, and the defensive drive will have to continue for a couple more laps. Not sure if we will end up in a green-white checkered scenario. This looks to be organic, but the caution out, we'll see what happened with the 82 of Brian Abbott, who is the main victim. And our caution, this is against the 48 of Robert Richards in a turn 1. And there it is, in a hard hit to the outside of wall. I think just met up with the 48 at the worst possible time. And the left front just hooked up with the rear end. And there's the extra slam by the 94 of Zimmerman. Easily, I believe, taking them both out of tonight's race. And here's a look at it. Turn 1, contact is made, and there's no avoiding the rest of it.
We've seen that a few times tonight, too, with turn 1 as well, where the driver on the outside line kind of arcs in and chops the nose or hooks the tail of the car or the truck in front of him. And I think that's just a product there of there's the little D-shaped oval in the front stretch here at Nashville Super Speedway, and I think it's a little bit deceptive when you're going in there and you have a truck on your inside. You think they're already going to be making that turn in, so you have the space and you just don't as much as you think. And I think that's where we're seeing just 2 trucks going for the same space there. Unfortunately, ended 2 trucks nights.
It's unfortunate there for Abbott, who had some nice runs in throughout tonight's race. And Eric Zimmerman, who was just trying to hold on the final 5 or so laps. And now we are under the yellow flag for what could be the final time from Lebanon, Tennessee. In sim, Tyler Dittmer is going to get brought back even with Keith Haney. And that's good news for Ted Wade and Adam Newbert, too. I know Ted Wade was slowly closing in on the battle for the top 3 in those last couple laps before the caution, but this is going to bring him much closer, and it is going to bring him inside of row number 2, which we've seen Ian be the most improving spot when it came down to getting some positions. It's been the best when it comes down to just anticipating when the leader's going and just getting the driver on your outside to go for a battle for second. So there's a lot at play. Nobody's going to come down pit road. It looks like the track position going to be too important. And Tyler Dittmer is going to have to play some more. If he wasn't Defensive Player of the Year or Defensive Player of the race, Ian, he is going to have to be Defensive Player of all time here at this point.
Yeah, breaking out his best Dennis Rodman impression here and really just locking down the metaphorical paint here at Nashville Superspeedway. But I think this restart really plays into the hands of Ted Wade. We've seen how he's able to drive in the turn one all race long. And I think that place that's going to be the best benefit to you is going to be on these restarts here. As long as the 78 of Haney, it doesn't spin the tires and check him up, I think Ted Wade's going to get a really good drive in the turn one and able to mix it up with the leaders here.
And if you're Keith Haney here as well, Ian, in the 78, I got to ask myself, if you're him, are you thinking, man, I should have went for the pass at this lap. I should have been able to stick it on this lap, because if I had made the pass on Dittmer, I would have been controlling this race on what could be the last restart here, as the lights are still on in the pace truck. Now he has to be at risk of losing that second spot and then having to get around Ted Wade, and then having to keep him at bay, and then having to go back at it to your race leader in a case where he's been trying so many times in that last green flag run, and none of them came to success for the 78. So it is a huge debate, I think, in the mind of the 78 here. Is he's going to be starting outside row one, and we'll see if we will extend this race. I think, Ian, we will. So our green-white checkered attempt may be used, our first of two here tonight from Nashville.
Yeah, I would tell you this, Kenneth. That is a glass half empty approach, with all due respect to the position of the 78 truck right now. And I think if he has that mindset, I think he's already lost this race. You look at the 78 truck all night long, you've been fast, you've led laps in this race, so you know you can get out to the front of the pack. And sure, maybe you didn't get the pass done on the 34 when you wanted to, but you got to look at this as an opportunity to make that pass now. The racing gods have thrown a yellow in your favor in this situation, so I think you really have to capitalize and realize that this is your chance to make a move on the 34 and make it stick this time. And I think if he has that mindset, I think we'll see the 78 truck in victory lane tonight. But like you mentioned, there's so many variables that go into this green-white checkered situation that we're coming to here. Although the lights are off on the pace truck, I'm not sure if this is natural or if we just went to the green-white checkered. I think we just went to the green-white checkered, but that's the mindset you got to have if you want to win this race for the 78, I think.
That is a valuable point, though, Ian. I will give you that. And the 78, I think all he needs to do here is just nail the restart. As long as he can keep Ted Wade behind him, I think that battle against the 34 is going to be something to look forward to. And you are right. We are entering our first of two available green-white checkers here tonight. We will extend this race. If we get to the white, no more cautions, and we will race to the finish. If we get a yellow, we'll try it one more time to end this race under green. Dittmer versus Haney, row number one, into the restart zone. And there's exactly what I anticipated. Dittmer going early, Ted Wade to the inside for second into turn one.
And unfortunately, Haney wasn't able to get the start that he wanted to, and Ted Wade able to slide up in front of him there off the backstretch. He's got a little bit of run looking on the inside of Ted Wade here, but you know that Haney likes that outside line, Kenneth.
They're going side by side for the top five. Now Haney lurks to the bottom underneath Ted Wade. Some slight contact drifting up the track out of turn four, and we will end this race under green. White flag from Nashville.
And right now, Newbert in the Ford truck is even trying to make a run here on the second and third, looking for a podium position for himself. Dittmer kind of looking away from the rest of the field in a battle between second and third between Haney and Wade right now, Kenneth.
Wade and Haney going at it. Adam Newbert, the third truck in it. Tyler Dittmer came into this race with two straight third-place finishes. Tonight, it'll be two spots better out of turn four. Tyler Dittmer will cross the start-finish line and win race 4 of the NASRA Triple M Pulling Truck Series, and he takes the Starbase Comics 200 and will lock himself into the Season 5 playoffs, as Haney will finish second, Ted Wade will finish third, but Tyler Dittmer wins from the Music City.
Yeah, and Haney, they're able to barely nip Ted Wade right at the line. Norbert there was actually looking, trying to make it 4-3 wide going across the stripe as well. So a great battle there, second on through fourth. And then Joey Doucette will round out your top five tonight here from Nashville Superspeedway. But what a drive from Tyler Dittmer just in the latter half of this race. Really was the truck to beat all night long, Kenneth.
A gorgeous race put together by the 34. Again, I mentioned 2 straight third place finishes before tonight. 27th at Daytona, an average finish of 11th, and this time it'll amp up the number as Tyler Dittmer will get to butt kicker victory lane for the first time this season. He becomes the 4th different winner in 4 different races, so no repeat winners so far in season 5 going into Sonoma, as Dittmer will burn it down and he will wave to the virtual fans here at Nashville Superspeedway, who definitely paid to see a great show and a fantastic battle. I think, Ian, with this win from Dittmer, and you're looking at him celebrating right now, you cannot forget how good Keith Haney and Ted Wade were at giving this 34 a run for his money. Even Joey Doucette, Brady LaBeouf, all those guys have put up such fantastic runs against your current race winner here tonight. And so props to all of them, but Tyler Dittmer on top.
Yeah, and giving the fans here the little Alan Kawicki victory wave, I can appreciate that. But yeah, the plethora of situations that Tyler Dittmer had to endure in this race to end up in victory lane. You mentioned the late race restarts, the stage breaks, the pit stops, the battles, fending off everybody after coming out of pit lane. He just had to fight everybody off in all different types of situations around Nashville Superspeedway tonight, and he did that, and that's why he's in victory lane tonight.
So as Tyler Dittmer will continue his celebrations, it is also worth noting that it'll be the 19 of Christopher Blanchard who gets the NASRA 360 Hard Charger Award here from Lebanon, Tennessee. Started 26th and he finishes 13th tonight. So a nice award given to the 19 machine. I saw him a little bit not getting the laps in practice as quickly as I've seen other drivers do, but it all works out in the end. Tyler Dittmer, though, is your race winner. He gets it done here tonight in the Starbase Comics 200. He'll have Keith Haney behind him. Got to give props to the fight that Keith Haney put up, not only in that last restart, but in that entire last run before our last caution. Keith Haney with a great second place finish. Ted Wade, coming fresh off the win at Martinsville, picks it right back up where he left off and finishes inside the top 3. We'll talk to all 3 of them before we finish our coverage here on Racecraft TV. It's Adam Newber who brings the 4 truck home in P4 out of all places. Nice ending for him. Joey Doucette in the 16. We saw some great speed out of his Chevy Silverado. The butt kicker machine not getting the victory lane tonight, but he does round out your top 5. Brady LaBeouf in the 9 machine started up front, ran up front for a majority of the race. Could not get back, though, to the top 3 near the end. He ends up in P6. It'll be 7th for the 23 of Stephen Thomas, who started 17th tonight. Chris Cinnamon ends up in P8. It'll be 9th for the 13 of Michael McKinnon, and Ian Keith Bradley in the number 29 rounds out your top 10.
Trey Pitts in the 21 truck out of Carolina is going to come home in P11. Jacob Klinghardt in the 5 truck that Kyle Larson inspired paint had a good bounce back effort, finds himself in the 12th position. Christopher Blanchard 13th. Taylor Peacock able to stay out at the end of the P1 or the stage 2 there, and the green flag stops, gets himself some good track positions, comes home at 14th. Devin Painter in the 99 15th. Justin Lumpkin in the 87 after finding himself up front most of the night in 16th at the end of the race. Cody Knott comes across at 17th. Tony Smith in the 51 18th. The Jeffrey Sickles 22 truck at 19th, and James D. Morris rounds out the top 20.
It'll be 21st for the 45 of Dana Shepard. Adam Cantwell, who was at one point our Hard Charger Award winner, he falls to 22nd, so it's still plus 12, but not good enough to beat the number 19 at Blanchard there. Robert Richards in the 48 ends up in 23rd. He is the last driver on the lead lap scored. It'll be Jason Morales, first truck 1 lap down. He is 24th at the end of it. It'll be 25th for the 17 of Brandon Bullock. James Haney in the 55 ends up in 26th tonight. It'll be 2 laps down. 27th for Dane Hagen in the 39. Jose Luis Rivera had been lapped twice. He finishes 28th. It'll be 29th for the 24 of Zach Hardwick. And Huck Wigginton, we saw him in his Starbase Comics Toyota stay out on one of the last restarts and could not pick things back up. He ends up 5 laps down to round out your top 30. Here are the final 6 drivers as it stands. Brian Abbott involved in a crash with Eric Zimmerman, so they end up 7 and 8 laps down respectively. Jonathan Munda disconnected earlier on in tonight's race. He is 33rd. Lucas Whitehead also did the same. He's 34th. CJ Fondal and Derek Kilgore, the 53 and the 11, caught up in our first caution tonight, and they immediately were out of the race in an unfortunate break for both of them. We'll see if they can rebound by the time we reach our next race at the Sonoma Raceway. But for now, it's time to take us trackside and to Butt Kicker Victory Lane, where we are joined by the 34 Tyler Dittmer, winner for the first time here in the NASRA Truck Series, NASRA Triple M Pulling Truck Series in Season 5. Tyler, I think we got to immediately talk about the defensive approach you took in that last run and that last restart. But before we get into all those details, how were you able to walk away in that last restart for your first win of the year?
Yeah, just getting the jump, got a good jump, and Wade got underneath Haney, and after that, I was pretty much all she wrote. I saw those two racing side by side, and it was like, as long as I don't hit the wall, I run a clean line. Don't go too easy, but run a clean, smooth 2 laps. I was going to be good to go.
And it looked like this truck was dialed in ever since you started outside row 1 in P2. What went behind this blistering pace from Nashville? Not like if tonight was the only time you've been as quick. Of course, last 2 weeks you finished third both times. But tonight, what went behind just the blistering pace and what separated yourself from the rest of the field and most of the long runs here in this race?
I'm not really sure. I actually bought the track Wednesday and only practiced here in the session, and that's pretty much it. So I think I was comfortable. It's a track where you have to brake to get the car to rotate, and just kind of had a good steering ratio. And I kind of saved tires better than I think most of the field did tonight, and that's what allowed me to keep kind of covering off there when I pitted first, because I knew if I pit first, I'd get track position, and then I'd be just holding guys off on a couple laps older tires, and that kind of worked well for me.
And holding guys off, I think, is the right phrase to describe that last run. I know we're going to ignore the last green-white checkered run for a little bit, those final 2 laps, but it was basically that 30 or so lap run. You against Keith Haney, against Ted Wade, Adam Newbert, and a bunch of other guys at the end of that race. What were the emotions and the thoughts like behind the wheel as you kept seeing driver after driver after driver pull into your rearview mirror, trying to make a pass for the lead, but you just kept your composure and stayed in it?
Just don't make a mistake and don't catch lap traffic at a bad time. I was worried I'd lose the lead to Keith when Peacock on fresh tires unlapped himself, and I kind of got stuck on the outside, but I was able to kind of run it fast enough out of 1 and 2 on that lap to keep the lead and just take the air off the nose of their trucks. You know, the trucks got tight when you were behind someone. You had to keep just the left front corner below someone else, and you were able to turn. So that was the whole strategy tonight, and it paid off there at the end. And I mean, obviously racing with those guys, we all raced really, really clean. I'm pretty proud of how we all raced up front. Ted Wade and I, being top 3 again, it's always a fun battle with him, and Keith as well.
That was definitely a great battle, I think, from us up in the booth. Ian and I going absolutely ballistic, watching you guys go side by side, watching the pressure, and you held on to it. And of course, like you said, all of it does pay off here at the end of the Starbase Comics 200. So now you join 3 other drivers who have wins this season: Chris Cinnamon, Joey Doucette, Ted Wade. You become the 4th different winner in the first 4 races of the campaign. Now that you're locked into the playoffs, what's next for Sonoma on forward?
I got a couple of strategy tricks I want to try to sleeve. I'm not the greatest road course racer, but I'm probably middle of the pack, and see if I can try some things. I have the win in the bag, so I can be a little bit more creative with the road courses especially. But really, right now, the goal is to get more wins and more playoff points. Those are huge. Started the season with quite a few playoff points because of the duels and clash, so just get more and more.
And of course, the stage win at the end of lap 80 certainly helped when it came down to that as well. And you also pick up the race win, locking yourself into the playoffs. Of course, Tyler, on behalf of our entire team here at Racecraft TV, want to send you a huge congratulations on the win tonight in the Starbase Comics 200 from Nashville Super Speedway. Wishing you the best of luck for the rest of the season, but congratulations, you're in the playoffs. Go celebrate.
Thanks. I just want to say thanks real quick to my fiance. She watched the race tonight. She's a huge supporter. And then obviously all the sponsors, everyone that makes this happen at NASRA, especially Butt Kicker for Victory Lane and Pulse Poppers. Sorry I missed that poll by 7 thousandths, but I'll get one again. I guarantee it. Starbase Conks for the race. You guys at Racecraft, NASRA 360. Check that out. So I appreciate all of your work, and looking forward to getting some more wins this year.
So it's Tyler Dittmer to Butt Kicker Victory Lane for the first time this season here from the virtual Nashville Super Speedway. An unbelievable job by the 34, but you also have to commend the 2 of Ted Wade, who tried to put the fight to that 34 in the last handful of laps. Unfortunately, we do not have Keith Haney right now in our waiting rooms to interview second, but Ian Fisher, he's all yours. Ted Wade finishing 3rd tonight.
Yeah, I'm standing by here with Ted Wade. Came home P3 tonight here from Nashville Super Speedway, continuing his great run on the season. And Ted, looks like you were challenging up there for the lead of this race early, got in that little incident in turn 1. What happened there from your point of view?
Oh yeah, man, we're just racing hard. I felt like I was faster than him, but if you got to get around somebody, and he drove me clean. I just kind of dove it in there on the outside, trying to get it to stick. If I could clear him mid corner, I knew I could get around him, but yeah, the lines kind of just came together there.
Yeah, and you talked about how hard it was to pass. What makes it so hard here to pass at Nashville Super Speedway? I know we started at a green track state, so no rubber on the track. Did it start to rubber in a little bit, and did that make passing even easier as the night went on?
Nah, it was about the same all night. I mean, you had to get a good run either on the corner entry, lifting early and trying to come off, or just something different. You had to try something different than everybody else was doing just to get momentum. But everybody was so close on times tonight, it just made it very difficult.
And we're watching your truck now. Little bit of damage there from that early race contact. Did that affect you any going into the latter stages of this race? Were you able to make a challenge for the lead at that point? Like, was there anything missing from your truck that stopped you from getting up there, maybe challenging for the win later in the race?
Nah, I don't think it hurt us any. It was only a few seconds of damage here, but tires, just trying to conserve tires, and we're running so hard there at the end, trying to not let people get away, and you use them up.
Well, still manage the tires good enough to come home for P3. So on behalf of all of us here at Racecraft, just want to congratulate you and your team on that. What are you looking forward to going into Sonoma and the right and left hand turns there?
Oh, I love road course racing, definitely, for sure. I don't think we have full course cautions on, so that'll definitely shake things up a bit.
Well, we'll look forward to watching you next week there at Sonoma, Kenneth. I think Ted Wade's going to be definitely one to watch out for the rest of the season here. Again, congratulations on your P2 finish there, Ted.
Thanks, guys. I just like to give Over the Top Designs a shout out. John Hedrick over there painting our trucks. Dan's Top Notch Heating and Cooling, Bruzy Racewear, NASRA, Triple M Pulling, Front Motorsports. Thank everybody here at Racecraft. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, and Ted touched on a little bit there, Kenneth. Everybody that helps us put on into this NASRA Triple Pulling M truck series here, and Pulse Poppers here sponsoring us for the Pulse Poppers 200 here at Nashville. Great to have all the support, and just really great racing we saw all night long here from Lebanon, Tennessee.
Yeah, some great racing overall. And by the way, that's the 4th straight top 10 for Ted Wade. So if there's something that you can use to describe that number 2 is consistent as always, and with the win, I mean, he's becoming a threat potentially for this 2022 championship. But we get ourselves out of Nashville tonight. Lights are out. We're on our Jeff Gluck quiet track moment here after Tyler Dittmer's celebration for his first win of the season. 4 different winners or championships still very much up in the air. And now we head to the wine country, Sonoma in California. The road course up there, unfortunately, we don't have the spring version with all the grass, but the track has elevation. The track has some challenging turns. And with these trucks, it's going to be a great race to spectate.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the first big shakeup to the points that we're going to see all season long. We're going to see some drivers that excel on the road courses really jump to the top of the pack and really able to separate themselves from the rest of the field here. So going to be a test of all these drivers' skills, as it always is every week here on the NASRA Triple M Pulling Truck Series. But Sonoma's really going to be the one to watch out for, going back to my home track over in Northern California, Kenneth. So I'll be excited to be in the booth for that one for sure.
You know, it's always a great thing to be a part of the home track broadcast. I think a lot of drivers talk about it as well, but even as broadcasters, we love those hometown races and what's in store for that. Sonoma's going to be our first road course race of the season, and so much more to look forward to in Season 5 of the NASRA Triple M Pulling Truck Series. But we close out the Starbase Comics 200 with Tyler Dittmer in butt kicker victory lane for the very first time this season. So for everyone at the NASRA Triple M Pulling Truck Series, for all our associate sponsors, Starbase Comics, Butt Kicker, Pulse Poppers, NASRA 360, everyone involved in helping this series happen each and every week for Season 5. And on behalf of all of us here at Racecraft TV, our producer tonight, Zach Johnson, and my very own colleague in the booth tonight, Ian Fisher, my name is Kenneth Bueno, saying so long and congratulations to Tyler Dittmer on win number 1 in the campaign. We'll see you 1 week from tonight, next Friday, August 5th, where we head to California. Sonoma Raceway. Up next, Tyler Dittmer, your winner from Nashville.